All right. Hello. Welcome in to the first, you could call it the first, you could call it the last rendition of the Boys of Summer Fantasy Baseball League podcast. I am joined by my co-host, co-commish, not co-champion, but he came close, Eric Follman. How you doing today, Eric Follman?
Oh, pretty good. Not too bad. Talking about baseball with the winter weather still hitting us hard, but we're getting close, hopefully. We're getting close. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
It is a beautiful day to talk baseball. There's never a bad day to talk baseball. I'm going to start
Agreed.
us off with the first burning question. Eric, is there going to be baseball this year?
Man, I sure hope so. I mean, I can't say I'm following it to like a day by day basis because I tend to not freak out until, you need to freak out. But I mean, it's getting a little scary out there, and I really wonder what is going to happen. But I think they'll find a way to get it done. I just don't think they can afford with, the COVID pandemic a couple years ago affecting the game and everything going on. I don't think they can really. Nobody wants to go into a lockout again. So I think they're going to get it done. That's my optimistic view. What about you?
They're so far apart that I just feel like it's going to take games missed. It's going to take something for the owners to finally give in that this is what we want to do. So as soon as you start hitting them where it hurts in the pocketbooks, where they're not bringing in revenue, they're not playing games, I think that's what it'll finally take for the owners to finally secede some of the things that they want to secede. I mean, I don't think that the players are really asking for too much. And I think that the players have the best interests of the league in mind. And it's frustrating because you hear what the things that the owners are shooting down that are not in the best interest of the longevity of the league. And it's super frustrating.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is baseball isn't such a unique sport because there is no salary cap. It really is about owners and revenue and how much money your team makes. It's not like this or basketball where they have to use 80% of their cap every year. There's nothing like that in baseball. I like the ideas of trying to limit tanking with the draft lottery. I think that's a great idea. Because there's some really bad baseball teams when you get towards the end of the September, October, where they are not trying to win ball games.
This would
Uh,
never get agreed upon, but you want to know what my fix to tanking is?
what's that?
Is you do it like we do our league. And that's kind of why I have it the way that we have it, where you don't make the last place team get the first pick. You make the first team that didn't make the playoffs, give them the first round pick. So you're always incentivized to always try every year. And if, hey, you didn't make the playoffs, you missed it by a game, there, hey, that now you get the first round pick. And nobody's going to tank the last game of the year because they want the first pick as opposed to getting playoff revenue. But it does punish the teams that are bad every single year and don't care about it because they're trying to get picks. That's who it punishes.
Do you ever
You'd have to hit that salary floor because you have to pay those serviceable borderline players to try and get your team to be at least mediocre.
Right. I wonder if you ever get in a situation though where an 82 win team is vying for that one game playoff and they're like, we're not good enough to beat that 110 win Dodgers. Let's just lose this game and get the first pick in the draft.
Every year we
Especially if a Bryce Harper's sitting there in the draft.
anything baseball can happen.
Yeah, that is true.
All right. So let's get into our league.
Let's
Eric,
do
how
it.
do you think the first year went? Kind of not
Uh,
really the first year of the keeper league, I guess you could say.
right, right. Yeah, second official full year, right? So we do have two champions, you and Eddie. No, I think it was awesome. I think the thing we figured out with the roto and the head to head was great. I think it was really really cool because I mean, for example, I didn't make the head to head playoffs somehow, some way. I mean, I got absolutely stunned by that, but I was still in it at the roto until the very end. I mean, I had the lead. I didn't make the playoffs, and I believe I had the lead in roto until about 2 weeks left in the season, and then my team just decided to take a massive shit the rest of the way. But I mean,
Real
it let me watch and appreciate and kind of pay attention to my team all the way up until the end, even
Yeah.
though I wasn't in the head-to-head playoffs. So I think it has something for everyone. It was great. I think it was fun, and yeah, I'm really excited to get rolling on it again.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it. You nailed it. It's hey, I missed the playoffs, so then you could have just taken that last month off, and then you don't have to pay attention to the chat. You don't have to be on waivers. You don't have to do anything like that, and that's not good for anybody. So it's good to keep as many people involved in the league as you can. Plus, as we mentioned, whoever the first person that was out of the money, so it looks like it's going to be Jay, the batting swashbucklers. That team will have the first pick in the reserve draft. As a quick reminder, who is eligible for the reserve draft? It is anyone who is not on a major league roster is eligible for the reserve draft. Those players are not eligible in the auction. So anyone who is not called up yet, so not on the 40-man, not on the major league roster, or it could happen where if a free agent is not on a team, they will not be auction eligible. They will only be eligible in the reserve draft. It happened a few years ago where Craig Kimbrell went into spring training not on a roster, and he was eligible for the reserve draft. He was the first pick of the reserve draft in the other league that I was in. So it could be interesting, especially with a weird kind of circumstance this year where there might be a lot of free agents come draft time that aren't on teams. That pick could be very valuable.
Yeah, and the only thing I would say too about this, I wish there was a way, and I think it's impossible, but I wish there was a way for the teams that truly are out of it to kind of still pay. And I know it's tough because I'd argue I probably, if I was 12th or 13th in August or September, I wouldn't pay attention anymore either. But if you noticed when everything was still competitive, the roto numbers were hovering around 100. And then once teams kind of stopped paying attention, those teams that were still kind of leading in some categories in 10th or 11th stopped paying attention. Other teams rose. And by the end of the roto season, we had 4 teams over 100 points, another 2 over 90. It just kind of like got clustered at the top. I wish there was kind of a way we could do that, but I understand that that might just be the nature of the beast as well.
Certainly and naturally, the more the season goes on, the more it'll kind of separate. The good teams will keep getting better, the bad teams will keep getting worse, and the trades that were made kind of reflect that as well. So I think it's kind of how it should go. And some people that kind of chose to tank this year, such as Crimmy and some others, they have really good squads and really good assets going into next year that are probably more valuable than getting the top pick anyway.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Any surprises for you this year? Anything from looking back at last year, anything that really surprised you or stood out about the league as a whole?
I think for me, a lot of it was just how close some categories can be over 162 games. And I don't mean like the common ones of like, oh yeah, home runs are within this or that, but the amount that OBP, and I know it's crazy to think like the bottom OBP team, I think had a 324, the top had like nearly a 350, but so that's a big difference. But the difference between like 1 and 5 sometimes in OBP and how many at bats you need just to get that point up or point down, that can change a lot. The ERA is another one. The WHIP's another one. I led Ks, I think from May to like literally September, and I lost Ks on the last week of the season. Yeah, I mean it's to Dave, to who I traded Scherzer to, and I lost by 8 Ks. And I looked, and I remember when I made that trade, I'm like, I have such a big lead in Ks that I feel like I could get away with it. And I was 8 strikeouts away from doing that. So I mean, to me, it's amazing over the course of that long of a season, just how kind of tight it can be at the end.
All right. So we have our current standings here. These were the standings at the end of the year. So as you can see, this was our final Roto rankings. So our Roto rankings, Chris came in first, then myself, then Eric, then Jay, Phil, Dave, Bryce, Justin, Peter, Tyler, COVID-free, formerly known as the other Dave, Chad, Crimmy, and Pablo Sanchez, Eddie. That was our Roto standings. But as far as our league champion goes, we're going to click over on this tab here. And when this screen loads, it will reveal that your league champion, yours truly, of the head-to-head. That's right. Burns when I PV. Yours truly. Round of applause. Thank you.
There we go. There we go. There you go.
Oh, my many adoring fans here are going crazy. Taking down Justin, the surprise second place finisher in
and that's Kyle, what makes head-to-head fun. That's an 8th place Roto team that really stole my spot in the playoffs.
A little bit. How much does that sting?
Right. Now, I mean, literally stole my spot in the playoffs. And I hate to be the what if guy, but I'm looking at round 1 of the playoffs and seeing, of course, how my team would have done. Didn't want to be the guy that said if my team was in, but it was so hard not to. But props to Justin being the 8th, literally the 8th best Roto team, technically the bottom half of the league, or pretty much right in the middle, and making the championship and keeping it that close. I mean, you wiped the floor against your dad in round 2, and Justin made that one pretty close there in that championship.
Yeah, it was great. It was 5-4-1, I think, was the final in the championship. So yeah, it came down to that last day. It was great. He gave me the biggest run for his money that he could, but just came up short. You really hate to see it.
And I also sorry. I was gonna say I also love the Sundays when the league's about to turn over and we have like the last head-to-head games of the week, and sometimes like it's I love Roto, but I also love that head-to-head
A
aspect
lot of
because
times
there's
it comes
times
down to Sunday Night Baseball.
it does, man. And it's so fun to go out there and be like, man, my pitcher needs 6 Ks and a quality start, and I get 2 categories right at the end of the week. I mean, and that happens frequently. And I think it's really, really fun because it makes you pay attention to the singular games more rather than just a total roto where you're just like, I'm just collecting stats. I
Yeah,
really like being able to watch those singular games and have them
agree.
make a big difference.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that I love how unique this kind of league is and what it's become. And I think that the format that allows us to do this and how Fantrax allows us to do this is just really great. But the best,
Hell yeah.
I mean, I'm biased, but best league ever been, most creative, and I think just best of both worlds with everything. All right, so those are our league champions from 2021. We're hoping here we can all agree that we want the same leaderboard at the end of next year, at the end of this upcoming year. Hopefully nothing changes. Hopefully it's still the same when everything gets said and done. Let's first jump into, before we get into trades, let's take a look at the waiver wire. Looking at the names of players that got claimed throughout the year, is there one name or one or two names that stand out to you that really kind of changed the scenery of the league and kind of really flipped things over? A guy that was just not drafted, but picked up at some point this year.
I would say, I mean, one of them that I was shocked to see his numbers at the end because I always, he's always kind of been the same player year in and year out, was like a Brandon Belt, I think was a huge one, like 30 home runs, 380 OBP. And that's just not something you think of when you think of Brandon Belt. And that was, I think, not even in 400 at bats. He missed quite a bit at the end of the season where he could have very damn near clubbed 40 home runs. So, I mean, that's one that sticks out to me, but I noticed that a lot of these ones that are listed are guys that got picked up and traded. Not often were guys just completely held all the way through. So it's interesting to see how these guys are picked up, valued at a C player right away. And then like May or June, how much value does that hold when it comes trade deadline time? And it seemed to hold a lot of value because a lot of these guys were dealt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. And I like that touch to it that, you know, it seemed like a lot of the C players towards the deadline got traded for future assets from the teams that kind of picked them up throughout the year. Eddie was one that did that a few times, trading Rodon and Mullins. And those would be my two, is Carlos Rodon and Mullins. Those were picked up in like the first week or two. And I mean, those were in starting lineups basically the entire year that those two were healthy. So those were two, both picked up by Eddie, were two that I think were the most impactful. And it didn't really pan out this way, unfortunately. But I thought the number one guy that was like acquisition mid-year that kind of made the most impact for that team was actually Logan Webb, that was picked up by Dave, just a blah team. I mean, he made such a big impact for his team. Unfortunately, it didn't really pay off for him because Dave didn't finish in the money, but Logan Webb was stellar down the stretch, and
Yeah.
it could have been what the driving force to putting him in the money. Unfortunately, he still came up just short. Some other names that we can throw in there: Frank Schwindel, Frank the Tank,
Yeah.
James Clanahan, Akil Baddoo, Alek Manoah, Adam Duvall, Brandon Crawford, Adolis Garcia, Robbie Grossman, Jake McGee, Jesus Aguilar, as you mentioned, Brandon Belt, Adam Frazier, Willie Adames, Jonathan India, Trevor Rogers, and Jesus Aguilar were some of the top players that really made impacts on various teams throughout the year. That sometimes the waiver wire wonders can be just enough to kind of put you over the top.
Can win some championships.
All right, let's go to our trades now. We had several trades. Several is not even the right word for it. We had an abundance of trades. I love the involvement from the league. I love the movement. Nobody's ever complacent. We're always looking to move. Is there one trade that stands out to you as kind of the biggest trade that kind of flipped the league on its head, that kind of really stood out as put somebody in the money or out of the money?
Well, in terms of actually two teams being competitive, I would say, I mean, yours where you got Simeon was huge because I don't think anyone anticipated that from Simeon this year. Not that Nola was bad. I think Nola wasn't great, but I think that
For
those
those
were the
wondering, that trade was Mackenzie Gore, Alek Manoah, and Simeon coming my way, and I sent out Mancini, Matt Chapman, and Aaron Nola.
right. And not that Mancini, Chapman, and Nola. I mean, none of them were like downright awful. Even Mancini put together okay numbers, but it's just one of those where Simeon did what Simeon did, and that's all you can really say about that one. And Manoah actually turned into a pretty good piece later in the season as well. But in terms of next year, I mean, you can't not look at that Krim and Tyler trade where those big assets were moved. Mike Trout, Eloy, Chris Sale, Fernando Tatis. Krim was making trades all year last year, and I think we're going to see kind of the flowers of that as we talk about it later.
Yeah, that trade was Fernando Tatis and Profar going to Tyler, and Tyler sending out Chris Sale, Eloy, and Mike Trout.
Big haul.
Kind of setting up Krim this year to rake in a few of those assets. And I don't think Tyler's been mad about it either. I mean, he's getting probably the best player in fantasy on a $46 contract. So I think that that's kind of the price of business there. And I think it was something that kind of helped both sides that they're both going to value. Kind of have to agree there. I think that was probably the biggest blockbuster of the year when it comes to different names going different directions. We also had an Acuna and Soto swap, but that was I guess it was pretty consequential for me. I mean, I don't win the league without trading Acuna for Soto. I don't think.
And how cool of a trade was that, where you could say Acuna's gone for the year. You probably like Acuna more than Soto overall, right? But at that point, you're like, I got to win this league. I got a really good shot at winning this league. And Crimson's sitting there like, hey man, I'm out of it. Send me Acuna. You can kind of take the little bitest of a downgrade in Soto and right off into the sunset. So I mean, again, you see those trades in keeper leagues. You wouldn't see that in any other league, which I think is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can't ignore what Acuna can do behind the plate. I mean, he has been a 40-40 guy, and he can probably go back to being that. And Soto just doesn't offer those stolen bases. And I also think Acuna's got way more power, probably hitting in a better lineup as well. So I mean, you can't really ignore those things. I think home runs, and stolen bases, Acuna will take down over Soto if they both stay healthy. But Soto's on base percentage and run production are going to probably be higher. So I mean, they're in the same tier. They're interchangeable to me. So yeah, any opportunity that I could try and stay in the same tier of a contender was enough for me to pull the trigger on that. There was a couple other trades that kind of shaped the league. There's one more that I want to point out, which was one that happened in like the second week of this season, which was a trade that was made by Bryce and I. And it was Zach Gallen, Dylan Carlson, Jose Urquidy, and Ketel Marte heading my direction. And in return, I sent out Michael Conforto, Josh Bell, and Victor Robles. I think this one has to go down as the swindle of the year. I don't know if you agree or disagree, but to basically take on 4 keepers in that trade outside Dylan Carlson, but only give up Conforto, Josh Bell, and Robles, who probably none of them are going to be kept this year. None of them were good last year. I think it was it set me up in getting off to the right foot.
I was going to say, I'd say it's a setup trade, because in terms of how those guys impacted you last year, Marte had decent numbers, but played about half the year. Gallen wasn't that great. Carlson isn't on your team anymore, correct?
No.
And then Urquidy, good, but needs to get in the rotation, right? So I think in terms of, yes, setting you up this year, great trade. But I don't know if that really helped you too much win the championship last year, outside of maybe Marte's numbers.
Yeah, some other notable trades that I do want to point out were Kyle Schwarber and Andrew Vaughn for Blake Snell and Sean Doolittle. You want to do over on that one?
Hey man, you guys were rubbing it in when Schwarber was $14 and saying how dumb that was. But I mean, at the end of the day, Schwarber wasn't an impact towards the end of the year, really. And Blake Snell, I thought I needed something in rotation. Turns out I didn't. And yeah, he can go kick rocks.
Yeah. I gave up Kevin Gausman, a $7 Kevin Gausman, to get back a catcher and Wilson Contreras and Ian Kennedy. I don't really know what. I gave up Ian Kennedy. I gave up Kennedy and Gausman to get back a catcher. I don't know what I was thinking.
And that goes against your fantasy code, my dude.
I know, against fantasy code. I'm not even trying to explain that one. But and then we'd be remiss if we did not mention the Trevor Bauer trade that I was heavily critical of. Where Chris gave up Sean Manaea, Dansby Swanson, and Aaron Savale. And he got back Aguilar, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Trevor Bauer. And I was very critical of Bryce in that trade, because I was like, man, giving up Bauer, you didn't really get anything back. And wow, looking back on it, I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, Dansby Swanson, probably a keeper. Savale, certainly a keeper.
All 3.
Sean Manaea, one of the best values in the league. And then Bauer never played again. I don't even know if he's going to be kept.
Right. And that's why that was the best trade Bryce did all year. I think it really kind of salvaged his team a lot, because he was content on ripping it apart throughout the season. So that kind of got him back into good graces there, because no, it was a good move. And it was, I don't want to, Chris almost dang near cost himself. I mean, he ended up winning that roto, but man, he could have really won that roto if he didn't do that. But it almost cost him. It really did, but he came out on top there. But big trade.
Yeah. Lucky for him, he was still able to place by a few points. It was like a 1 point roto difference going to the last day, but luckily
It was.
he ahead. But yeah, I think he lost in the first round or something in the playoffs, something like that. All right. We do have a few superlatives here. We don't have superlatives for everyone, but there is a few that we have here. And the first superlative that we have is the Indiana Jones Award. The Indiana Jones Award for uncovering several hidden gems on the waiver wire. And that award goes to Eddie Mazer.
Hey.
Congratulations, Eddie Mazer. Your award will be in the mail. Eddie Mazer claimed Carlos Rodon and Cedric Mullins off the waiver wire this year. Basically, probably the two best players that were undrafted for the entire league. He got both of them in like the second week.
And you know what it got him? For being this Indiana, I thought Indiana Jones, like, finds these treasures, maybe, wins, he comes out on top on the movie. He still came in 14th. Well, like, can you give him the Indiana Jones Award for being this big hero, getting these waiver wire acquisitions? And the guy who can't do anything with these guys, they're C players, still came in last.
He was able to move them for some guys that will probably be kept, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
There you
Second award we have is the most likely to trade their firstborn child because they're bored. And that award goes to Bryce.
Hey.
To trade their firstborn child because they got bored. Bryce will sell the entire farm 3 times over and have nothing to do with it. All right. Next award goes to next award is the most likely to point out a player's numbers in either the last 4 days or in the August of 2015 in any negotiation. And that award goes
if this is any surprise. That was no shocker there on who's getting that one. Yeah. I think you can etch your name in that category every single year. I think you're good on that one.
Most likely to point out a player's numbers in the last 4 days or in the August of 2015. I have no issue doing that.
Yeah.
Next award. This award is the Rose-Colored Glasses Award for overvaluing their trade assets, trying to trade nothing for something time and time again.
The Carbones.
It goes to the other Carbone, my father, Phil Carbone, for trying to trade Carlos Santana and Eric Hosmer throughout the year, just so they could rot away on his bench. Miguel Sano. Miguel Sano was another valuable piece.
I'll say the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree on that one. I will say that, but I do agree that he might take it over you, but due time.
Next, we have most likely to go into rebuilding mode after the first week of the season, who is also about to be a dual award winner because this person is also taking home the award of most likely to tell you to go fuck yourself, which is Crimmy Charles.
Of course.
Congratulations. Your award is in the mail. Next, we have my favorite award, which is the Aaron Rodgers Award. The Aaron Rodgers Award for a significant playoff fizzle out. A player that we had high hopes for throughout the year, was a regular season darling. The roster looked great. We all predicted him to win. And then come the postseason, just came up short as he typically does in Aaron Rodgers fashion. That is going to Jay Snyder, completely placed out of the money. Didn't make the finals, didn't make the quarterfinals in the head-to-head, didn't come close in the roto. Just kind of didn't have enough gas to get to the finish line. So congratulations, Jay. He was second in roto on August 31st, then got the first round bye and still didn't place in the money.
That's pretty wild. That is a tough ending to that season.
That's a bad beat. That's a bad beat. You hate to see it. Next award, we have most likely to keep prospects that won't be called up for another 4 years. And that award goes to Peter Panagakos.
He likes his prospects.
Who drafted like 8 prospects. None of them made their rosters this year. They rotted away on his bench until
that hurt his team. Literally, without that could just segue into the next award. How about that? Because that's a perfect segue into the next one.
The Premature Ejaculator Award also goes to Peter, who was in first place after week 1, but then the injury bug hit and he had no replacements and didn't want to trade anybody and didn't have any guys to fill those spot. So Peter also went the future ejaculator award.
Because he drafted so many prospects, his bench was absolutely gassed. I mean, what do you like that? He literally, I mean, he was first for a decent amount of time, and his team. I remember even we did a show in like July or August where you're like, Peter's team is still like they could do it, but he's got to do something. Like he's got to do something, and he just never quite did.
Yep. And then our last award, very heartfelt, comes from the bottom of our hearts, which is the Blighest team of the year. We know where this is going. Dave, congratulations for winning the Blighest team of the year. 6th place in Roto, right in the middle of the pack. And it wouldn't be fitting unless you went out in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So congratulations on another Blah year from David. Congratulations.
I like it.
So those are our superlatives. Hopefully next year we can get a superlative for everyone. We can think of a few more kind of as we go along. As we transition into the free agents that are going to be available this upcoming season. As we go through each roster here in a little bit, everyone's going to have money to spend over. Everybody's going to have money to spend. Nobody's going to go into the draft with $0 to spend. It's not possible because you're going to have at least 6 roster spots to fill. You're going to have at least $6 to spend somewhere. So these are going to be the players that are going to be available. And there's some top ones, but there's really, as we'll talk about, there's not a lot of depth. So from our opinions, we have a big 5. There's like 5 names that kind of stand out as going to be free agents this year. Those names are going to be 3 pitchers: Carlos Rodon, Logan Webb, Alek Manoah. Breakouts, guys that we didn't really have high hopes for going into the year, kind of broke out throughout the year. And then 2 hitters who went undrafted: Cedric Mullins and Tyler O'Neill, kind of some 5 category contributors in O'Neill and Mullins. Eric, what do you make of those 5 guys? Any one of those stand above the rest?
I would say Manoah. I think Manoah, young guy coming up, was a huge prospect. Him and Pearson out there in Toronto have been waiting to come up for a while. A lot of people thought Pearson was going to be better, and I still have high hopes for him. But Manoah really came up and put on a clinic last year. And I think him being young is kind of what makes me say that. Not that Rodon couldn't have turned it around, or not that Logan Webb couldn't have turned it around, but these guys have been in the big leagues for a few years and shown what they've shown. Manoah's new, and he showed he's ready to do well right away. Yeah, so I'm excited to see what he can do. I think that Toronto team is absolutely loaded, and he's going to be a big part of their success this year. So he's one to watch out.
Very rare does a guy come up and dominate the way Manoah did with a 3.22 ERA in his rookie season.
Yeah.
Hopes after he won 9 games in 20 starts, won 9 games, 111 innings pitched, 127 strikeouts. So well over a strikeout inning. Yeah, he was very good. I mean, you can't ignore what Rodon did, but I mean, health is always going to be a concern. And we saw it last year when he kind of got hurt towards the late end of the year. He has never been able to stay healthy for a full year. I think 150 innings is his maximum. You can't ignore what Cedric Mullins did either. I know I've mentioned him a few times, but Cedric Mullins, just a 5 category contributor. He was actually a guy who was a switch hitter going into the season. And then in spring training, he decided that he was going to ditch switch hitting, and he was going to I think he just hit from the left side, and it did wonders for what he could do. Instead of focusing on doing both things, he just became a really good lefty bat. And then he hit 291, 360 on base percentage, stole 30 bases while hitting 30 home runs. I don't know how many 30-30 guys we had. Couldn't have been many. Do you know how many 30-30 guys there were?
Oh, not at all. Not many people are stealing that kind of stuff anymore. So
yeah. So did Ohtani steal 30?
I don't think so.
And I don't think did Ramirez hit 30 home runs?
Ramirez, you mean Jose Ramirez?
Yeah.
He wouldn't have got 30 stolen bases, would he? If he doesn't do that.
Trey Turner probably did. But anyway. Oh, there, here we go.
Oh yeah, Ramirez had 27 stolen bases. So you were right. He had a lot more than I thought.
So no, was he the only 30-30 guy?
Probably.
He was. Yeah, everyone else either didn't hit 30 home runs or didn't steal 30 bags. Jose Ramirez went 36-27. Tatis went 42 homers, 25 stolen bases. Ohtani, 46 homers, 26 stolen bases. Bichette, 29 homers, 25 stolen bases. And Simeon, 45 and 15. Wow. Trey Turner came close because he needed 2 more home runs.
That's crazy to think that he even hit that many home runs. That's wild.
Yeah, the bat's always been there, but his health is always kind of his biggest thing. Is there anyone else from outside that big five that you think is going to go for big bucks in the auction this upcoming season?
I think based on just how much money teams are going to go into the draft, I do think some guys, I guess you can argue, are going to get overpaid for in the draft, which could turn out just fine. But we kind of were talking about this pre-show that there's not really big superstars out there. Now there might be some decently big names that are not kept that go back out into the wire, which we'll obviously get to in a couple minutes here. But there's still some young guys out there that might not be kept that were good. I think, Jesus Luzardo could be interesting. I think Brandon Belt, obviously, with what he did last year. Brandon Crawford, I mean, again, talk about a guy that isn't supposed to do that with the bat, and he did. So definitely some interesting names. I'm curious to see how teams do spend their money when it comes draft time, because there are teams probably going to be heading into this draft with quite a bit of money to spend.
Yeah, it's to me, and I agree. I think that guys are going to go for way more than we expect, just because everybody's going to have so much money to spend. But I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting arms, a lot of interesting pitchers. That guys were kind of flash in the pan guys that were kind of burst onto the scene last year. And some of those guys outside those big three that we talked about: Luis Garcia, Shane McClanahan, Patrick Sandoval is the guy I'm pretty high on. Desclafani, Tariq Skubal, Bailey Ober, Shane Baz, Cal Quantrill, Marco Gonzalez, Kyle Gibson, Emmanuel Clase, Colt Irvin, Wade Miley, Tony Gonsolin, Justin Verlander, James Caprillion, Jesus Luzardo, Huascar Ynoa, and Zach Thompson, who guys that had really good outings and really good stretches last year that were kind of either picked up on waivers or dropped at some point, that will be available this year. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what the priority of those guys are. And then a couple of flash in the pan hitters as well, especially those Cubs guys, Ortega and Frank the Tank Schwindel. If you are wondering how to access who's going to be available next year and beforehand, let me show you. If you go to the players, this was our players screen, as you guys can kind of follow along here. If you just kind of search for whatever you want to search for, stats, projections, whatever it may be, it gives you the contract next to each. So anyone who's an A contract is likely to be kept, or doesn't have to be kept, but likely to be kept. Anyone who's a C, so we go down to Class A, who's a C right here, that person will be available next year. Once the keepers are in, in a few days, I'll probably go through and release all the C players to free agency, so you can view them there. And then in a few weeks, when we get our keepers in, I'll be releasing those players as well, and you'll be able to see those. But if you're looking to get a head start, that's how you can access those players. All right. Any other comments on any free agents this year before we go into our team by team?
Not too much. I mean, you always got to be on the lookout for those guys that, kind of pop up late in the draft. They're like, oh, I kind of forgot they were there, $2-3. We saw that a couple times last year with the Syndergaards, the Eloy Jimenez's, Luis Severino that I got for $1. So be on the lookout for those guys, because there was a point in the draft last year where Kyle had his strategy going where he was waiting until the end with his money, and he could have jumped on some dudes for extremely cheap, and it can happen. $1-2 guys at the end. So people conserve your money, go for it, whatever you want to do. It makes it fun.
I mean, that's how I got Voit, Syndergaard, and there was one other guy that I got late.
And you were on the verge of Eloy, and I mean, he was there towards the end too. I mean, it would have been kind of crazy if you would have been able to do all that.
Yeah. All right, we'll do the potential non-keepers towards the end once we go through every team.
Sure.
Sound good?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
All right, so we have special guest Bryce Schmidt calling in. Bryce, how you doing, man?
I'm great. I'm so stoked for baseball season to come back. I mean, hopefully it does come back pretty soon. I mean, it doesn't look super promising. We're getting a bunch of news about college games on TV and stuff, but I don't know. I literally haven't got any messages lately because for some reason Facebook hates me.
That's weird.
But
we were wondering where the hell you been, man.
Yeah,
what the hell?
dove head in first this morning, just looking at keepers and whatnot. But I don't know. I like my keepers. I mean, I won't say specifics, but my total budget, if I kept all of them, is $118. That gives me 142 left over for 14 players. 6 of those are starters, 8 are bench players. So I mean, I can go pretty big on those last 6 starters and just get okay bench players. So
So tell us, who are some of the guys that you're locked in, untradeable, and who are the guys that you'd think I'd move them for the right price?
Montas, Stroman, Bassett,
Which ones are
Correa. These are my locks.
Okay.
Gallo, and that's probably it, honestly. Yeah, those are my locks for sure. But I mean, anyone can move, but those are all those players are pretty good price. So I don't know. It'd take a good amount to move them for what they're going for. I guess one player that I don't know. I like Albies. He did really well last season. 27, not too bad. It's all like even with Nola,
Breaking
him
news,
and
are the Albies available for trading?
I
maybe I don't know.
when I will say when we get into our list a little bit, Albies was one that I don't think it's a bad price, but it was one that I considered like I think that is a fringe price for him, like where you could
I
maybe,
agree.
yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. And then Nola, in my opinion, he's too expensive. But it's really in my head, it's hard because I don't know what pitchers are going to be left on the table. Like, are there going to be any like top pitchers left on the table for me to spend on? So like if I kept him, I don't know. Like maybe it's worth it keeping him at 37. Obviously, he didn't do too well last year.
That's a
But
big point that Bryce is bringing up because, we might look at some of these guys and go, well, I don't really love him at that price. But if I look at what we think is available, I might just have to keep him knowing that he's not going to be worse than what I have available in free agency.
yeah, exactly. So that's
Or
the
in the
thing.
same breath. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Bryce.
That's the thing. I just like you really have no idea what's going to be left. Like honestly, I bet a lot of the top pitchers won't be left. So you kind of got to take that gamble on whether you hope there's something out there or not.
And
Yeah.
another strategic play too is, I mean, maybe you do want to keep a guy, or maybe you want that guy back on your roster, but you don't want to pay that price, and you let him back in, but you still kind of target that guy in the draft. I wonder how many teams are going to do that, where they feel like they're paying a little bit too high of a price on their team, but are willing to still have that player on their team, but try to shave off a few dollars come draft time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I was thinking about that too. I don't know. I don't super. I was looking at some rankings. I think Nola was top 10, I think, ranked. I can't remember for sure. I think that's true though. But like he didn't have a great season. So I don't know if I want to trust him for 37 either. I don't know. So keepers are fun. I love keepers.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna go back and forth for a bit. But
Should we dive into it, Kyle? What do we got?
Yeah, I'll say, Eric, why don't you give me your keepers that you think that Bryce should keep?
So my 12.
Yeah,
Okay.
12.
I have Salvador Perez at $7, Joey Votto at $11, Josh Donaldson at 7, Correa at 11, which I think was a big steal that I think Krim maybe got him to start with. Or Gallo at 19, Straw at 2 for stolen bases, obviously. Montas at 6, Stroman at 17, Alex Reyes at 4, Bassett at 5, and really the two big money ones were Nola and Albies, and both of them I kind of pondered back and forth. I say on my list you keep them both because you'll still head into the draft with $107. You'll have 12 guys. I would keep Nola because the track record's there. I mean, he had a 4.6 ERA this year, still had 220 strikeouts, which is a huge category in itself. His whip actually wasn't as bad as his ERA indicates. That whip isn't phenomenal, but it really shouldn't indicate a 4.6 ERA. And I don't really see a guy with that caliber going back-to-back seasons with that high of an ERA. If you look at his last 3 years, besides that, he's been a solid pitcher. I keep him. And again, still debated with Albies, but I would keep him too, just because I think based on where your team's at right now, I don't know if you're recouping that in the keeper draft and getting better value than that.
Yeah,
that's fair.
I guess some of the guys we disagree on is I guess Carrasco is kind of a curious case on how much you really believe in him, because I know Bryce, you kind of made the investment. You didn't want to move him, waited so long for him to come back just for him to have a 6 ERA and a 1.45
not good.
So it's tough for you to just now throw him back when his price is only $8. I kind of imagine that just mentally you kind of have to hang on to a guy like that, knowing what he kind of could be. So he's a guy that I kind of had penciled in as you to keep. I kind of ignored Donaldson, but I'm backtracking on that. I think Donaldson probably does need to be kept for $7. I mean, he's going to be 37 this year. He's not getting any younger. He's not going to probably get more than 500 at bats. Guys that are that old just aren't Iron Men anymore. I don't think he's going to hit more than 27 home runs. He had 26 last year. So it's just like, what are you really getting in Josh Donaldson? Like, yeah, he'll be okay. He's not going to play 7 games a week. He might hit 25 home runs, drive in 75, but do you really want to pay $7 for a third baseman when third base is typically a position that's pretty deep? I don't know. I think you guys are a little higher on Donaldson than me. I think you probably do want to keep him. But if I'm comparing Donaldson, who would you rather have, Donaldson or Mancini? They're the same price. One's a first base and one's a third baseman. Similar.
First base is so deep too, though.
First base is very deep.
Yeah.
Mancini.
I like Mancini as a guy more.
Looks like he lost it.
And first base, and that's a good point, is first base is so deep. And I see a lot of guys that overpaid on first baseman, and there's a lot of like $11 to $15 first baseman out there, which are really, really good ones. And that's what makes it tough for some of the ones that were overpaid on.
If you throw Votto back, you're going to spend more than 11 on him?
Definitely. You definitely would.
More than 11 with how deep first base is?
I don't know. The season Votto had last year, you got to keep him at that, right? You have
He's not
to.
getting any younger. He's going to be 39.
But did you see what he did last year? How do you not keep that at $11?
36 and a homers and a 375 on base percentage is pretty damn good.
Yeah. I mean,
and then if he does that stupid thing with his bat before each at bat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had his final keepers as Perez, Albies, Correa, Mancini, Gallo, Straw, Carrasco, Montas, Stroman, Reyes, Bassett. And I think he probably keeps TJ Antone if there's reports that he could be the closer. For $1, he's certainly got good stuff. So you kind of might want to take the flyer there, which would give him $144 in salary, which means he could have $146 going into the draft, which would be pretty attractive.
Yeah, I got him at a total of 153 and leftover 107, which still based on my numbers
is the big difference between me and you. Is that's why he's got less for your projection.
Right. And I mean, still going in based on what I have for some other teams, going in with $100 is still going to be one of the more, at least on my end, I don't know what Kyle's got, but still going to be one of the more open salaries heading in. There's a lot of them that I have under $80 to spend. So
Bryce, what were you going to say? I kind of cut you off there.
I really can't remember now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts? Any positions you need to trade for? What do you need? What does your team need, Bryce, to be successful in 2022?
Good starting pitching, which is the only reason I might keep Nola. I mean, last year my bats were fire, and I mean, I had a good starting pitching rotation at the beginning of the season. I just got rid of them all. So that's my big thing. I can't find the standings for last year, but if you look at like the Roto standings, I mean, the only thing I was decent in was saves, for pitching at least.
Did have good
so
quality.
yeah, so I guess that's the big thing. My bats are going to be fine. I think I have some good bats for pretty cheap. So
certainly
that's my big thing.
All right. So you're welcome to stay, Bryce. We're probably going to regret this, but we better let Crimmy Charles in. As we welcome in. Connecting via audio.
He's Canadian. It'll take him a bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Go over the international date line.
Yeah.
The internet.
I got like truckers honking and stuff could be affecting the internet or some shit.
Oh man, that internet's got to travel quite a long ways.
It does. His team's one of the more unique ones heading into this one. It's a fun one heading in.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, his roster is good, but knowing who's behind the ownership,
Yeah, because he'll just blow it up. He'll just set a nuclear bomb off on his own team. We've seen that time and time again.
Oh damn, I want Bogey back from him.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I'd trade for Bogey.
I wonder if you let him in and he left. How long ago did he try to get in?
Send him a message and let him know that, like, hey,
okay. I bet you he's tried to get in and left his computer and he has to hit the button to connect. I bet you that's what happened.
He's about to send me a message.
Oh, okay. He's probably like,
this is great podcasting right here.
Oh yeah.
You want to just go ahead and go on your spiel while we wait for him?
For Crimson's team?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Mike, I love Crimson's team. Obviously, we're going to break down our 2 early power rankings before the draft later, but Crimson did a really nice job last year with a lot of his trades. I don't think they were all perfect, but I think he did a really good job setting himself up to not only, I think, have one of the most talented rosters right now already, but he's also going to go into the draft with a lot of money because of the trades he did last year. So, the keepers for me, I have him Crone at $4. Easy keeper there. Bogarts at 25, Jimenez at 8, Brandon Nimmo at $1. Torkelson, I think you keep at $8. He could be the kind of Wander Franco player of this year, that top prospect that comes up around May or June. That Detroit team probably won't be too good. So you'd hope that he would get called up at some point. Davis at $1, small sample size, but always been a really good high OBP guy. Acuna and Trout, got to keep him. That's a huge chunk of the salary. Manet at 5, Sale at 6, Syndergaard at 9, and I had the 12th. It was tough, and he's got a lot of options here, which I think means he could there's tradable pieces because he's got Pearson, Christian Javier, Taiwan Walker, Liberatore, and he can only really keep one of those guys. I think you keep Pearson at 3. I think he's the younger guy, the up and coming prospect. I think we've seen what we've seen from Taiwan Walker in the past. Liberatore's more expensive and still not at the big league level. So I'd say Pearson, which means he has 3 guys over $10 in his keepers. That's it. 3 guys. And it's Acuna at 49, Trout at 45, and Bogarts at 25. After that, every single player on his roster is under $10, and try to tell me one of those players is a bad player. I mean, those are all quality, good value players. And I think his team is going to show that this year with how much money he's also going into the draft.
Yeah, he's certainly got a different variety of players that he has options to keep. I mean, our keepers are what our projections are slightly different. I don't have him keeping Pearson. I think I have him keeping Taiwan Walker for 5 instead. He kind of had a good start at the first half, didn't really have a great second half. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what his opinion is on some of these guys and who he's keeping, who he's not. I also have him keeping Wendell at 3, which you don't even have him as an option to keep. So a little bit of difference in there. We kind of got started without you, Crimmy, but come on, welcome in, Crimmy. Jordan Charles, everybody.
Hello, everybody. You guys can go fuck yourselves first of all.
That's fitting.
Yeah, sounds about right.
No,
are you going faceless and nameless, Crimmy?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going faceless for sure.
Do you not put your makeup on this morning?
I'm fully nude right now, so
you're not wearing. Oh, you're not wearing a bra. Okay.
No, not at all. Not at all. Fully nude.
All right, Crimmy, what do you make of your team as it sits right now? Some of the trades that you made and all that.
I like where I am right now. To be honest, I knew that. Sorry, in the second half of the year, my team wasn't great. Like obviously, we weren't making any ground anywhere, so I kind of prepared to be in a position to where I can kind of flip the switch fairly quickly. Like you guys mentioned before, my keepers, Eric brought it up. I don't have much going in salary-wise outside of the 2 big hitters with Trout and Acuna, which is something I tried to plan for, because if I can kind of make room to bring in somebody, obviously I won't bring in a big hitter because they're kind of going to be kept for the most part, but keep it, I have the money to now maybe overspend a bit and bring in more quality guys. That was my issue. I didn't really have people who stood out after I traded Tatis forward, Trout and whatnot. I mean, I had, quality dudes. I had Correa and all them, but none of those guys are, they're household names, but they're not somebody that someone's, clawing at. So moving Correa was good for me. It's just pitching. Like that's the biggest thing. You guys kind of broke it down with my pitching is I don't have a stud. Everyone has a stud except for me. And that's kind of an issue.
And the thing I think about his team too is if he's keeping Manaea, he's keeping Sale, he's keeping Pearson, he's keeping Syndergaard. I mean, that's 4 out of the 7 starters right there, and maybe 5, depending on what his final keeper's being. He's already got 5 out of his 7 pitcher slots like decided already. And
Exactly.
He did trade Alex Reyes late last year, which was
then.
Yeah. And I mean, he did have Alex Reyes last year, and he had to make that determination. Do I keep this closer at such a cheap price? Decided to obviously trade him, but really he's got 4 or 5 starting pitchers already. He needs a closer, which leaves 1 more spot for a starter. So his rotation, I think, is already pretty decent, and he only needs one spot to fill. So maybe you do spend a 30, 35, $40 on that one pitcher to kind of fill it out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's kind of what it would certainly need. I mean, it's hard to say that you don't really have an ace because we know that Syndergaard and Sale can both be aces, but we also know that we can't really rely on them to throw 200 innings. So yeah, they might be an ace for 78 innings before, you know, something happens to their arms, but you know, it certainly has a high potential. And you know, it has a high potential when you have Mike Trout and Ronald Acuna on your roster too, but both guys who have also faced health concerns over the last year or two. I don't think Trout's played a full year in a while. I mean, luckily he's kind of, other than last year, this you know, avoided. No, I can't even say that. Last 2 years, 53 games and 36 games.
Well, 53 games in a 60-game season.
Oh, that's right. Okay. That
Yeah.
makes more sense. Thank you for pointing that out. So, I mean, yeah, last year, 36 games. So he's missed some time, you know, 114, 140, 134. Usually he has about 1 or 2 DL stints. So we'll kind of see how it plans out. He brings a lot of risk, a lot of I wouldn't say injured vets, but a lot of guys that don't really have the best track records of staying healthy, but certainly has one of the highest ceilings of any roster of any team in the league.
Yeah, and just to kind of expand on that point, yes, Trout's, you know, his track record being hurt isn't great. However,
you know, he's going to produce
a lot
the games he plays.
Yeah, and we've seen that with a lot of people. I mean, even Tatis, who I moved for Trout, he got hurt the year before, and then we started the league, obviously, and kicked it off. I picked him up, and it seemed like every other week he was getting hurt, not playing a couple of games, did that weird swing where he threw his whole shoulder out and was probably out for ever, as you know, what people thought when it happened. It's happening a lot with, you know, even younger people. So it's hard to kind of avoid it, and you kind of do get lucky in a sense. But I do agree with, if it becomes a growing theme with someone like Trout, then it's, you know, cause for concern. However, if it happens again, I can easily just kind of let him go going into next year and not be too concerned with my core, at least with Acuna, hoping he comes back, you know, at least close to full strength this year.
The thing about trading for stars is that they always have trade value. You can always trade Mike Trout and get something back for him. Crimmy, what's your game plan? What does your team need in the draft, and what do you need via trade? What kind of moves would you be looking to make?
I mean, much like Eric said, a closer. I don't really have, you know, I don't have a closer. Like, I literally have no closer. So a closer would be a good place to start. But I do think that I have a chance to kind of grab another pitcher. Like you guys said, I do have kind of options there. I can shop around. Outside of that, I mean, everyone's going to probably go for stolen bases. I had, you know, Wendell, like you said, you suggested, Kyle, I might keep him. I know he's kind of up there in age, but the team he's on isn't, you know, complete garbage, which helps. But stolen bases are a category where there's maybe 3 guys that you can rely on every year to grab you 20, and then you're kind of just throwing sticks and hoping something,
That's what I've been saying.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard. So I don't really have like one clear cut player or kind of category I'm looking for. OBP was really bad for me last year, so maybe a player in regards to that, but more so it's really just yeah, not really. And he's probably gone. I mean, I don't think I'm going to keep him.
For $1,
unfortunately, that's what's hard. I mean, I don't
keep
really
JD
want
Davis
to.
over $1.
That's the thing. It becomes kind of muddy where I have 3 or 4 players that are $1, and I have to pick 2. So I need to kind of just see, you know, what they were. You know, I kind of just trusting my gut at that point. They're not really the same player. They're pretty different. Mm-hmm. But you know, one brings home runs, one brings OEP. Like, it's kind of, you know, pick your poison at that point. So I guess really that, and I guess one thing I would kind of like to have as a catcher. I had one last year, obviously traded him away. A catcher that's consistent, because it seems like most catchers last year were either stupid good, like Salvador Perez, so I traded it away, or really bad, or kind of just, you know, you don't even really notice a difference. So one, you know, getting a catcher that's actually going to make a difference to me again I think it's something I might kind of key in on.
One kind of hurdle that I'm looking at your roster, and I was like thinking to myself, like, oh, like I have Iglesias, or oh, I have like Contreras to like try and trade you like for some of the positions that you need. But I'm like looking at this, like you have good keepers, but it's like, well, what are you giving up in a trade? Because like you have like the top guys and the bottom guys, like some of your like the bottom guys, like I don't know if you're going to get much for JD Davis in a trade, even though he might be a keeper. Some of your top guys, you're not trading Acuna, Trout, a Sale, and Syndergaard. I'm thinking in a deal like that. So I think you might find some hurdles of just having those kind of middling pieces, those like kind of like movable contracts, almost like as if it would be in like the NBA, like they'd say like those salary matching trades, those $10 to $20 million players that are perfect to include in trades. I don't know if you kind of have a lot of those pieces that are movable on this roster in trades.
No, that's fair. I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from.
Doesn't mean your keepers aren't good. I mean,
no,
locked and loaded, just kind of
that's kind of where I am too. It's going to be more so. I have my keepers in mind, and it's just essentially going from that to the draft and seeing what's there. Because your example of mid-tier NBA contracts, it's essentially I have a LeBron, I have an Anthony Davis. And then I have a.
Was that a good comparison right now? Is that a good comparison right now?
Yeah, I mean, not relatively, but wise and star status wise, I would say yes, they kind of stack up.
And I expect to like LeBron in the finish this year like the Lakers will.
Yeah, 8th seed.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did, right? So I mean, if the shoe fits, we'll wear it. But yeah, it would be kind of difficult to kind of try to shop around guys. Obviously, it might come down to where something like Bogarts may intrigue some people. That's probably the biggest piece I would let go at this point. I mean, obviously,
I know somebody who would want.
There's a Red Sox fan on here.
That made me smile right there. That made me smile.
At the same time, though, where did he come from? He came from Bryce. He traded him away last year. So does he actually want this man?
I mean, Bryce, do you have a closer?
I have Reyes. I can give you Reyes back, bro.
Was that what the initial trade was too? Anyway,
I think there's more to it, but
I think it was Correa and it must have been Correa and Reyes for Bogarts, and it was included more than those three players, but
yeah,
definitely.
So is Correa for what was it?
Oh, that's confusing.
Correa and Reyes for Bogarts and Paddock.
Yeah, Paddock kind of is someone kind of just sat there too. Like I'm pretty sure he was hurt most of the time, which my entire team was hurt most of the time.
And not good,
but
he didn't do good.
Yeah,
last year
I mean,
either.
We'll revisit this. I would not mind getting Reyes back, and I would not mind giving Bogarts back to you if it comes down to it.
Correa, I don't think he's going anywhere though. For $11, I don't know.
No, that's the thing. Like, he was someone who I liked, but being a free agent and not knowing where he's going, if he goes to a place that's a team that's not going to be great for him, or they're going to struggle at first trying to get him acclimated and stuff like that. Like, sure, it's a cheap keeper, but
also to be fair with Correa, he's a great baseball player, but when it comes from a pure fantasy perspective, he's never been like an amazing fantasy player because he's never been a huge OBP guy, and he's not 35 home runs, and he doesn't steal bases. So like last year, definitely a great year. You'll take that in a year, but I think that's also why he was $11, because he's never been like that huge 4 or 5 category kind of guy.
Yeah, I don't know. That was one of the first years where there are more categories than a few.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Joey Votto and Alex Reyes for Bogarts might get it done. Help you in your on base percentage that you mentioned, Kermy, and
Kyle's the mediator here.
That'll definitely help.
Do we have a deal? No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, before we even deal, I want to know if they're going to even play the damn game. So I feel like that needs to be sorted out first.
Kermy, is there going to be a season this year?
I don't know. I would hope so. But I think what I heard the other day was that some stupid report came out saying someone said that the minor league players should be considered trainees and not get paid. Isn't really a good step in the right direction. Yeah. So, I mean, I hope so. I would love to see, baseball, but it's just disheartening to not see any progress happening, and it's almost March.
Certainly frustrating. All right, Kermie, any last words on your team? Any other trade targets? Anything you want to get out?
Yeah. Everyone there's nobody untouchable at the moment. For the right deal, anybody can go. So like, if someone's intrigued on Acuna, Trout, whatever, like
Sounds like
I'll
Crimson.
listen to anything and everything for the most part. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for hopefully things getting going. The experience last year was interesting because someone had to start the draft 17 times, but hopefully this time around it doesn't
don't give me that
way.
PTSD of that.
I don't know.
It worked out.
I'm excited. I'm ready to go. So, I'm in it to win it this year. I'm hoping that we can kind of field a team that's somewhat competitive.
Kermie is ready to wheel and deal. All right. You guys are welcome to stay. You can listen, chime in if you guys would like. Well, let's move on to Angels in the Trout field. Justin's team, top on our list here. Justin made a run, finished in second place in the head-to-head, second place in the league with this kind of bang up, mashed together team of C contracts, which kind of leaves the cupboard pretty barren for this upcoming year. I only have Justin projected for 8 keepers. So for those of you that have way more keepers than you know what to do with, 10, 11, 12, 14 keepers, Justin might be a guy you might want to call. Here are the guys that I have projected for Justin to keep. I think he keeps Goldie at 31. I had to backtrack that, as Tyler said. McCutchen at 1, Verdugo at 14, which isn't great value, but I think he just kind of does anyway. I know he likes Verdugo. Bieber at 40, Guzman at 7, Lance Lynn at 23, Will Smith at 5, and Pineda at 5. What disagreements do you have on that keeper list there, Eric?
The difference for me is I still think he could probably go for around that price still, but I just can't keep Goldschmidt at 31. And it kind of goes back to the conversation we had earlier about how good first basemen are. He had 12 steals, 31 homers, 99 RBIs, 102 runs. This isn't a bad season in terms of what happened last year, but I think with the way his roster set up is I don't have 12 keepers for him either. And you don't have him keeping Lindor. I do. And I think Lindor moving forward is probably the better option all around than Goldschmidt, despite Lindor's season last year. I don't think you can just write him off and say $36, pretty much the exact same price. He's just not worth it anymore. I mean, I don't think you can do that. I think Lindor is going to bounce back and be fine. I don't think you can keep them both, but with him only having 8 keepers, I could also see him doing that. So it's tough, but I think Goldschmidt's one of them. I also have him keeping Betts. Again, I think this team lacks firepower. I think this team lacks star power, and I don't think you could just let these guys all go back into the free agent pool. So I think you have to keep Betts at 46. I mean, he had a little bit less steals last year, but home runs not bad. Still scored nearly 100 runs, 370 OBP.
23 homers and nearly 500 at bats. That's not Mookie Betts like. That's not $46 worthy.
Well, yeah, but he's also what other category did he do bad in? 100 runs, 370 OBP,
58 RBIs on the year.
Well, yeah, that's gonna happen. I mean, that
you pay $46 for 23 homers and 58 RBIs.
So you're gonna sit here and say Goldschmidt at 35 years old at pretty much the exact same price, or about $15 less. You're taking Goldschmidt over Mookie Betts being a possible MVP.
Goldschmidt outproduced Mookie Betts in every single category except for on base percentage, where he lost by 0.02.
Mr. Sample size going back 5-6 years. Who's had a better last 3-4 years? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, and Goldschmidt's great. I'm not saying he's not, but we even scoffed at him paying that much last year for Goldschmidt.
It would be disingenuous of me to sit here and prop up Carl Goldschmidt after just bashing him off last year. Never in the world did I think that I would consider Paul Goldschmidt to be a keeper at $31 until like the season ended and I looked at his numbers and I went, holy fuck, he had 102 runs scored, 31 homers, 99 RBIs, had a 365 on base percentage for a first baseman, and had 12 stolen bases. Did that probably lead first base in stolen bases, that 12?
Oh, I'm sure it usually does. Yeah.
I mean, you have to kind of look at it like that and go, well, okay, well, like this is probably like one of the top first basemen outside of Guerrero Jr. in regards to production that we had. So you can't kind of ignore this. Let's see here. Chris Bryant had 10 first base eligible players. Real Muto could technically had 13. He was the only one first base eligible that had more stolen bases than Goldschmidt. So it's like you're getting that edge over every single person in the league because no one else in the league had a guy at first base that stole more than 12 bases because you're not playing Real Muto at first anyway. You're playing him at catcher. So it does give you that advantage. I don't know if Paul Goldschmidt's a keeper at $31 for most rosters, but when you only have 8 or 9 keepers, whatever it is, I think that you do have to pull the trigger and keep him because I mean, you kind of got to fill those slots somewhere, either use it or lose it. So,
and it's to be pointed out too. I mean, Justin's offense is going to head into next year, depending on who he keeps. He's going to have to almost have a completely new team. I mean, look at all the C players he has on his team. The only ones that are really keepable are Goldschmidt, Lindor, Betts, and McCutchen. And then you got Verdugo. I mean, literally his offensive guys that we're thinking of him keeping are the only guys. I mean, he's going to have almost a completely new offense last year. So, I mean, you could be right. You might have to keep Goldschmidt at that price because you don't have the offense behind him.
And Verdugo is good, but he's also going to drag you down in a lot of categories. Like, I mean, he only had 13 homers and stole 6 bases, 63 RBIs, and over 500 at bats. That's a full season. He just doesn't really produce that much. $14, I wouldn't pay $14 for him, certainly, but sometimes you just kind of get put in the corner where you might kind of have to. Now, you don't have to keep 12. You can keep whoever you want. You can keep 3 if you wanted to. He doesn't have to keep anybody if he doesn't think the value is there. He'd go into the draft at $260 if he wanted to.
And that's why, I mean, you both have him at 8. Yeah, we don't see 12 keepers. Yeah.
So it's kind of going to be up to him. He can kind of decide what he wants to do. He could have 200. I mean, I would probably keep Bieber and Gausman and some of those other guys, but I mean, he could have like $180 going into the draft and just outbid every one of the guys that he really wants going into next year. So, I mean, it could be a viable strategy. We'll see how it all pans out. I have him for $126 kept because I don't think that he should keep Betts. So that gives him 134 to spend in the draft next year, which would be one of the top dollars to spend. But he'd have a lot of holes to fill, certainly.
And my thing too is, like we've mentioned before, if guys see a Mookie Betts out there in the pool, is he not one of the first ones elected? And is he still not, probably with how much money is going to be in that draft, is he still probably not going for $46 based on the landscape? I still think he might be. And with Justin's team lacking a lot of stuff, I don't know. I think you have to keep him. I think the track record's there. I don't think you can look at it as a single season. I think the thing he has going for him is Bieber, Gausman, and Lynn. As long as they keep it going, because it's not like Gausman's been a guy that's been amazing throughout his career, but Bieber, Gausman, and Lynn is a solid, and then Smith as the closer. That's a solid 4 of pitchers. But I think, like you said, there is a lot of holes to fill outside of that. I have him at $172 with 88 left over.
I think a trade with Correa would make a lot of sense for Justin. I mean, if Correa wants Will Smith for $5, you can find closers anywhere. And I mean, Justin's got a lot of roster spots to fill. I think that Correa could fill a lot of Justin's roster holes.
Definitely
with one single trade. And I don't think that Correa has to give up much. I mean, you can look at Correa, and Correa could give him like Liberatore and JD Davis and some of these other guys that he may or may not be keeping, some of these fringe guys for Will Smith that, like, hey, Correa's not really losing much, but he's getting a surefire keeper, and Will Smith's at 5. I think that would make a ton of sense.
Right. Or Justin could be listening to this and saying, maybe I trade Betts for 2 or 3 lower price players, or, maybe there's a ton of options you could do.
Yeah, certainly. All right. So next we'll move on to Jay, the battling swashbucklers. I'll let you take the lead on Jay. I got to go piss.
All right. Jay's team, I think, is going to head in pretty well suited. His team, again, did fall apart last year, but it's not a bad team. I picked him as obviously the preseason champ last year. Freddie Freeman at 39. I think you keep, again, another expensive first baseman, but it is Freddie Freeman. I don't think you can go wrong there. I do have him keeping Polanco at $1, Austin Riley at $1. Trey Turner at 41 is an automatic keeper. I mean, he even hit way more home runs than I would have expected last year. So he did a good job with that. I also have him keeping Haniger at $1. So that's already $3 players. So he did a really good job of that, which was Kyle's big criticism. I'll have to wait for him to come back for that. Of Jay's team last year was that his $1 players sucked. So how about that? Reynolds at $3, Mr. Nick Wright. He'll listen to this later when he comes back. Stanton at $16. Cruz at 11. Hoskins, I do have him at 11. Not a fantastic season last year, but could get you 30 home runs, 100 RBIs, and I think you don't pass that up for $11. Castillo, I think you keep him. I know he had got off to that really, really horrible start last year, but second half numbers kind of proved that he was kind of getting back to normal, got back under a 4 ERA, still had close to 200 strikeouts, and he's entering his prime, 29 years old. I know guys can completely fall off after that, but again, with the pitchers that are going to be out there, if you don't keep Castillo, I think he immediately goes to the top cream of the crop of guys entering that draft. And I think he goes for more than $29 if he enters that draft. I just do. Cole at 44 is a keeper, and I do think you keep Jansen at 12. I know I'm not the biggest closer guy, but at least I think there is a little bit of a comfort factor of heading into a season, keeping a closer, knowing not that you don't have to worry about that category the rest of the way, but you're at least going in comfortable with it, not scraping to find a closer in the draft. So I do think you keep Jansen, although I do think there was tough calls between keeping Charlie Morton or Eovaldi over them. But I think just for the closer aspect, you keep Jansen. So I have him at $209, which I believe, spoiler alert, is like the second highest out of any team. Or tied for second, but I think his team with those 9 or 12 guys is still pretty solid heading into next year, but he's going to have to get more of those $1 players again, which he did a good enough job with last year in this draft as well.
Jay, I owe you a bit of an apology.
I did cover that a little bit when you were gone.
I heard you from
yeah.
Yeah, I was wrong. I thought that some of the guys that you got for $1 in the draft last year were duds. They are studs. I was wrong. I'm pretty envious of some of the keepers that you do have at some of the values that you have here. I mean, getting quality, like multi-category producers for $1 and Austin Riley, Jorge Polanco, and Mitch Haniger. And it's not like, you look at, and I'm gonna probably use this example more than once as I already have, but you look at like JD Davis for $1. Like, okay, JD Davis is like maybe an okay guy for $1. It's good to have dollar players to balance out your checkbook, but like JD Davis isn't really like contributing like big time in any category. Trey Turner, Austin Riley is like a top home run RBI guy. He also had 91 runs scored and a very good on base percentage. Jorge Polanco stole 11 bases, hit 33 home runs, going to score a lot of RBIs, a lot of runs. Haniger, 39 homers, 110 runs scored. You can't find those for $1 anywhere else.
That's $3 for 120 home runs and 300 RBIs.
Top 50 players. Like, you can't beat that. But no other roster in this league has that. Like, it's pretty incredible to have those. So I'm like pretty envious of that. I think that there's still, I don't know, the pitching staff is decent. Personally, I would not keep Castillo. I think that money could probably be spent elsewhere, or maybe just kind of throw him back and kind of get someone else, or throw him back and maybe just draft him again for maybe a few dollars more, a few dollars less. But I think that he's always going to be a high whip guy. ERA kind of fluctuates. He'll strike out some guys, but I just don't think he's in that ace tier of players. He's not keeping Hendricks for 15, I don't think. Charlie Morton's kind of automatic, locked and loaded, in my opinion. Keeper for 15, and then Jansen for 12. Ryu, I don't think he keeps him either. So I think there's some holes in the pitching staff here that he'd probably like to fill. Maybe trade some of those hitters for a few pitchers. I have him for 12 keepers. I have him for Freeman, Polanco, Riley, Trey Turner, Haniger, Brian Reynolds, Stanton, Cruz, Garrett Cole, Eovaldi, Morton, and Jansen, which would give him 12 keepers at 187. Giving him $73 left over in the draft, which is essentially similar to what you have, but I have him keeping Eovaldi, you have him keeping Castillo.
Yeah, and I also have him keeping there was one, I have him keeping Hoskins as well. I don't mind that as either, because again, I think his team's loaded offensively, and there's no reason he shouldn't be able to compete for the home run crown again. And Hoskins, 30 home runs. And he didn't even have 400 at bats last year. So over the course of a season, you project those stats over the course of a whole year. Hoskins probably has 35, 40 home runs, 100 RBIs with a 340 on base percentage. And I think for $11, I think that is a keeper as well.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess looking at the production in a nutshell, I mean, 27 home runs, 71 RBIs doesn't really excite you until you look at that. He did that in less than 400 at bats. So like a 500 to 600 home run at bat pace. That's more like 35 homers, 100 RBIs for $11. Like that's decent. But he also has Freddie Freeman already locked in at first base, and as we said, first base is pretty deep. So I don't really know. And he's already got Nelson Cruz locked into his utility. So are you going to go into the draft with zero flexibility, knowing that your two utilities are locked up for the whole year, essentially, with Freeman, Hoskins, and Cruz? You don't have any lineup flexibility if you do that. So I think that would probably be reason enough to not keep Hoskins for 11. But maybe if somebody's looking for a slugger, maybe there's some trade possibilities there.
Definitely.
All right. Anything else to say about Jay's team? The Buster
No.
Posey trade. How about that one not working out?
Yeah, exactly. The one where he got Brian Reynolds, who is having an amazing season, and he literally gets to keep Brian Reynolds, who's,
Posey was traded for Vasquez.
Yeah, but yeah, the Posey for Vasquez one. But I'm still irate that he got Brian Reynolds for what he did from Dave too.
What was that trade?
I can't remember. I'd have to look back on it. But if you go back and look on it, it's not good. I mean, it wasn't a good one. For some reason, when I go back on the transactions, it won't show me 2021. So
For Montas.
Montas, yeah, and not awful, but I mean, you take Reynolds, who's a 5. The only category Reynolds did not contribute to last year, the only one was, you could argue, stolen bases, and he still had 5, which isn't bad, not great, but that is the only category that dude did not perform exceptionally in, pretty much for the most part.
You want to know how to go to back to league history? If you go up to like the top here, if you click on my leagues. So right now, this screen I have under like the past league, so 2021. But like this other tab, I have it locked in.
Oh, I see. So if I clicked it on the 2021, that makes sense. Yeah. I gotcha. Okay.
So those of you that are wondering if you can't like offer trades, you can. You just have to be under 2022.
Right. Okay.
All right. So let's move on to our next team. We did Bryce, which is me. So I am our third team or fifth team, I guess you could call it, that we're going to go over. The league champ, hopefully back to back. The reigning champ, I will throw it in your face all year, happily. I have a wide variety of keeper options. What do you make of some of the guys that I have on the roster?
I know the way you probably like to operate thinking, and you probably want to go in with more money than I have you going in with, but it's one of those don't fix if it ain't broke thing. And I mean, you just won the league championship. I don't think you need to get too creative. Yeah, I don't think you need to get too creative in finding out what 12 you need to kind of scrape by numbers for. I got your 12 as Willie Contreras at $9. I know it sounds silly keeping a catcher. Maybe you can get him at the same price. So I could see you keeping him off your list if you wanted to save a little money there. But honestly, you're getting a top 5 offensive catcher for less than $10 when you're seeing guys like Uriel Muto and guys going for 20, which I think is still an overpay for a catcher. So I think Willie at 9 is not bad.
How many of those DH at bats is he going to get?
Right. Yeah. Who knows? Exactly. So those at bats could certainly go up. Abreu at 29. I even scoffed a little bit about that last year, but obviously he proved that again and again. Simeon at 13, no brainer. Hernandez at 4, Seager 31, Marte 18, Soto 49, France at 1, Alcantara at 13. I do think you keep Valdez at 1. People are just waiting for him to crack the rotation. He continues to put up good numbers. DeGrom at 49 is you pay 70 for him with the 75 for what he did last year. And then Lopez at 8. I think the Marlins have a really nice young rotation there. You got some young players. You do have some pricey players. So I do have you at $225 with only $35 to spend. I don't anticipate that being your 12 closers. And I know that filling those last 6 roster spots on $35 might be tough. But if there's a way to do it, I think you'll figure that out. I don't think you need to go into next year as the champ trying to go in with $80, $90, because I think you're going to find values for $2, $3, $4 and fill out your roster, which is coming back in as the winning roster. So I don't think you shake it up too much.
Some things to keep in mind too is like, now I'm like thinking about it now. It's like, well, if these are my 12 keepers, next year, every single one of these players after next year will go up by $5. So like, as we're kind of going through these, I won't be able to afford these these 12 keepers next year if that's what it kind of turns out to be. So maybe it is valuable to get more A contracts and not B contracts to kind of go through to figure so that the contracts don't overlap as much.
And that's a great point. And I think I don't want to say this offseason there wasn't any trades because of that, but I think next offseason, when you do have A contracts and B contract players, I think that's going to make a huge difference next offseason, because right now it's like you either got him for 3 or you don't have him. Next year, it's like you got him for 2, you got him for 1 more, and I think that is going to kind of open up the offseason next year. And that's a really good point on your end.
And like guys like France, well, France is a no-brainer at $1, but is France a no-brainer at $6 when he gets a $5 contract extension?
Right.
No, it'll depend on kind of how he's pitching this year. Valdez for 1 is great. Valdez for 6, I don't know. So it'll kind of be interesting to see kind of how that pans out, the decisions that people make and how much it goes into kind of their trade negotiations.
And I think go ahead. I was going to say, I think you're going into next year with not a whole lot of holes, because when you look at your team, okay, let's say you keep those pitchers, you keep Lopez, you keep Urquidy, you're hoping is obviously in the rotation, you keep DeGrom, you keep Alcantara, you keep Valdez. I mean, you could argue you have 5 starters already right there without really heading into the draft going, man, I really just need another pitcher. And that's why I think, again, I think you kind of go in with a go for value. You don't really need another big stud type of mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could very well, and this is a possibility, I could go in with an entire pitching rotation set and not draft a single pitcher. I mean, I have 5 guys written in pen. Those 5 are Alcantara, Valdez, Lopez, DeGrom, and Urquidy. I'm keeping Urquidy for $1. Not gonna throw him back. But then it's just like I got like 5 other guys. I could keep Giolito if I want to go in on pitching for 36. I could keep a mid guy in Gray for 14. I got no problems doing that. I could keep a closer in 13, or I could throw him back and get closers in the reserve draft or whatever it may be. So I kind of have options here. I could fill out my rotation and go all in on hitting and spend those extra dollars in hitting. I like the flexibility I have. And I think that a rotation with DeGrom as your 1, Alcantara as your 2, Lopez as your 3, Valdez as your 4, and Urquidy as your 5. I think that's a solid, probably top 5 rotation.
Yeah. And it's not sexy names either. These are a lot of I don't even want to say unproven names, because these are guys that just aren't getting as many innings as they should. Urquidy, I mean, good numbers last year. Lopez, 100 innings, but really good numbers last year. I think people might look at your rotation and see the names and go, ooh, I'm not sure on that. But we know it's like that might be a really inexpensive rotation, and you need it to be if you're keeping DeGrom, obviously. But no, I like it. I think you got a solid base there, and only if Manoah was an A contract, you'd probably be doing a little jig right now, a little dance.
Yeah, the hitters will be interesting, because I have a lot of decisions to make with the hitters. You have Contreras and Abreu as keepers for me. I don't know if I'm keeping either one of them. I'm going to explore some trades for some of those guys. Bregman's a guy that I'm looking to trade. He's the guy that I'm looking to wheel and deal as is. I would move Simeon, to be honest. I mean, he's got one of the better contracts in the league. I don't know. I with Ketel Marte being able to slide into second base, and I like kind of that flexibility that's offered there. And Seager, I don't know what I'm gonna do with Seager. Do I keep him for 31? I mean, the guy is World Series
Glass.
MVP.
Yeah.
Also made of glass.
Yeah, also made of glass. Still didn't get the 400 at bats last year, right? I mean, I don't know. And that's where it's tough, because Seager's got all the talent in the world. But and you're right. And I think I told you pre-show that when I first did your team, I'm like, he's got $280 worth of keepers. I don't think Bregman at 29 is an awful price. I don't think Seager at 31 or even Giolito, I don't think those are bad prices. You just, based on where your team structure is right now, you just simply, you got to throw them back, you know?
If I could trade Giolito and Bregman for $1 Mitch Haniger right now, I 100% would.
Right. No, yeah, 100%.
And just save that money. So yeah, I got some interesting decisions to make up. I am looking to cut some salary. If you're interested in any of those guys mentioned, Abreu, Bregman, Seager, some of the pitching, I have way too many names here on my pitching list. Sonny Gray, Iglesias. Those guys are 100% available. My line is open, looking to cut some salary. If you guys want to hit the old line. Next, we have Chad Seafelds. I'll kind of take the lead here on Chad's roster here. I am not a fan of what Chad did late in the year, and a fan of some of the keepers that he has. I only count Chad for 7 keepers. I think that he is going to struggle. He's going to go into the draft with a lot of money to spend. I have him for $197 to spend in the draft because I have his only keepers as Wander Franco, Whit Merrifield, Jared Kalenic, Yasmani Grandal, John Means, Castillo, and Eflin. And even those guys are no locks. Castillo, for one, I don't know if it was a lock. Kalenic for 8, he didn't prove it last year, and Grandal for 9. I don't know if you want $9 for a catcher. So I could see him going into the draft with 4 keepers. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, here's my thing with him is we know what he's gonna do. He didn't make all those trades to not keep a lot of those young guys. So
I wouldn't keep Mackenzie Gore for 8, but he probably will.
And that's the thing we got to look at. We don't see 12. He does based on those young players he has, and he's going to keep the Abrams, the Martin, the Varshos, the Adeles just to do it. But I don't know if the value's there in that, like you said. I got Wander at 8, Witt at 27, Reyes at 12. Yeah, I do think your Stremski at 14. Here's my thing, and I don't mean to say this to be mean, but Chad's team needs a lot of help. So again, is Yastrzemski a $14 player? Maybe not, but with you having such limited keepers, I think he provides that value offensively where you almost just need to hold on to that. Grandal at 9, again, I think you just need to hold on to that. He did have a really good category season last year. Means at 9, Castillo at 1. I do think, I mean, that San Diego rotation is so stacked. Does Gore get the Michael Kopech treatment this year? Which if he does, he's not worth it in fantasy. He's just not.
His number, like he didn't do a damn thing last year to prove anything. Like his numbers in AAA, and like he was terrible. Like they wanted to call him up, they couldn't because of how bad he was playing.
And that's the tough thing is so many of these young pitchers are coming up and they're not getting 5-6 inning starting pitching roles right away. They're coming up and doing like the 2-3 inning, Michael Kopech roles, or, even that Crochet on the White Sox, great reliever, could be an awesome closer somewhere, but he's not worth it in fantasy right now. So I don't know. That's what makes it tough. So I don't know if he's worth it, but I don't see Chad with many keepers here. I got him at $95 with 165 left over. Obviously, he's going to probably keep more than that. But again, at the end of the day, when you're trading for future pieces, don't look at it too like this is an actual real MLB franchise mode where you're keeping these guys for 5-6 years. You're not. You're keeping them at most for 3 years. So if these guys don't get called up and produce this year, what makes you think they're going to be keepers next year at $13, $14 if they haven't even seen the big leagues yet?
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Suppose that Chad throws back Yastrzemski, but keeps all the prospects and the young guys. So he keeps like Varsho, he keeps maybe a $1 DeYoung, maybe an Abrams, Kalenic, and some of these guys. Let's say that he goes into the draft. He's got 6 slots to fill because there's 12 or 18 roster spots. You can keep up to 12. So he's got 6 roster spots to fill. And let's say he had like $150 to spend. He kept all his cheap guys. Is there any possible way that he could place in the money with he would have like basically $30 to spend on each player. Could he make a contending team with?
I mean, at that point, you'd almost have to hit on every single guy you drafted and make sure you're spending that money wisely. I don't know. I mean, even his highest price keeper that he's keeping, Glasnow isn't even pitching next year, so that sucks for him. But Whit Merrifield at $27. If it's not for those steals, the category on base percentage isn't there. Home runs aren't there. RBIs aren't there. He's just under 90 runs. That's your best player right now. So I think he's too far gone. And again,
what would you do for him?
I don't know. I mean, it's tough because you have all these prospects. So it's almost like you're in a wait and see mode to get better, but then you're already in the last year of being able to hold them next year. So I don't know what you do. I don't. It makes it really, really tough. I think you trade a Whit Merrifield for someone that's starving for stolen bases and try to get what you can for him for like 2 or 3 semi-productive players. But I think Chad's going to have I'll just be honest. I think Chad's going to have a real tough time next year.
Yeah. Do you think that would ever like punt on this year?
I think he could, but again, you could argue he kind of did that last year with the moves he made. And again, I don't know how long, with only being able to keep players 3 years, I don't know how long he could keep this up without some of these guys really coming up and making an impact soon. So, I mean, we could be eating crow here soon with CJ Abrams and Adele showing their true potential, but they need to be called up and start playing soon. You can't have all these keepers, kind of like Peter did with his draft last year, have all these keepers and still not even having them playing. That you just can't have it.
Oh, I sorry, I misspoke. 'Cause I totally missed Franmil Reyes. Franmil Reyes is definitely a keeper at 12.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's probably, you could argue that's outside of maybe Wander Franco, probably the best bat in his lineup.
I, to me, like if I'm looking at this, I'm looking going in the draft and going, I can't fix this team and turn it into a contender using 7 roster spots in an auction draft. I would almost consider punting this year. I would throw Glasnow back, and then I would redraft him for as low as I could. I would draft all my injured players. I would draft free agents. I would draft the guys like Puig or something like that. Not Puig, but like kind of guys like that who could come back. There's, as you said, there's so much that has to go right, and I warned you guys about this last year. I was like, don't draft the guys like CJ Abrams who are not on the cusp of contributing, because by the time that they actually get up, they're not going to be worth their salary. CJ Abrams is not worth $7, and he has to come up and play, not only play, but play well to be worth his $7 contract. And then by the time he's actually ready to contribute, he'll be $12 and after his contract extension.
And then, if he finally gets good that year, do you get to keep him at $12?
Yeah,
no, you don't. You get to let him go. So that's what makes it tough.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see him just kind of taking another reserve draft, drafting all prospects in the reserve draft, and then just claiming guys off waivers, trading him for more prospects, and seeing kind of where he's at. But it's going to be very hard for him to contribute. I mean, he could very well listen to this if he wants to and go, no, fuck that. I'm just going to keep like Franmil Reyes, Whit Merrifield, Wander Franco, and like 2 other guys. Go into the draft with 12 open roster spots and actually try and compete this year, which is what he might have to do if he wants to kind of do it. But that's probably what it would take.
And that's why I'd go into the draft really nervous as Chad if he does want to compete, because he could, like you said, theoretically go in there with an open checkbook and outbid anybody on anyone if he wants to. But again, you can't swing and miss on that. You can't outbid a dude, spend 40 and have that dude suck because the rest of your team sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's no chance in hell that I would keep a guy like Austin Martin for 6. I'm not keeping Varsho for 6. I wouldn't keep Abrams for 7, knowing that there's no guarantees on the roster anytime soon. And there's only 2 years left of his eligibility. I mean, you don't want to throw him back and redraft him in the reserve draft. And then he's now going to be an A player next year instead of an A player or B player next year or this year.
Right.
I mean, that might be a strategy, but yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle for him, certainly. And Plesac for 13, I was looking at him. He's great if, like, for a non-strikeout guy, he only had 100 strikeouts and 140 innings pitched, which is like, okay, so he's a bad strikeout guy. That's fine if he's going to contribute an ERA.
Sure. Oh yeah.
4.6 ERA last year.
Yeah, totally great.
Yeah. All right. So that's Chad's team. Sorry, Chad, we're a little hard on you. I'm not really that sorry.
No, not at all.
All right. So we're going to go to COVID free. Now, before we get into this team, this was David's team. David is no longer going to be in the league. This is an open roster spot. And now I've gotten this question once or twice now. This team will be filled by somebody. It's just a matter of who. There is 2 prospects right now. I'm not going to spoil it. There's 1 or 2 guys. One is going to be a familiar face to the league, to some of us. And then the other I mentioned, which would possibly be Ricky Guerrero. He's going through it a little bit right now. He doesn't know if he's gonna have the money for it, so we're kind of pending. We're gonna try and get those spots filled. If not, if the person who I'm hoping joins does not, we'll try and find somebody to get in that spot. But no, these players are not going to be free agents. Whoever takes over this team will have their choice of who they want to keep and not keep, and make the deals that they want to make. So looking at this roster here, what do you make of this roster? Because I think you and I have 2 different opinions on how we view this roster.
I think it's got good bones to it. So I think overall, I think you can see some promise here. And honestly, if you're taking over this team for a keeper league after year 1 of a guy like basically leaving, right? It could be a lot worse. I would argue. I would say that. I think
it could certainly be a lot worse considering how disastrous the draft went for David, how he kind of sat out the whole second half of it.
Exactly. It really could be a whole lot worse, but I think there is some guys that you can build upon here. I think looking at it, I mean, he actually has 12 keepers, I think,
Yeah.
which is a start. So I think McMahon at $5, Chisholm at $2. I think Mancada at 11 is a keeper. Cronenworth at 4. Low at 17. I'm a huge Laureano fan in Oakland at 6. Freed at 22. McCullers at 15. You know me and my closers. I don't like paying a big money for him. I think 23 for almost any other closer is too much, but for Hader, he's the only one that makes sense because of those strikeout numbers. I mean, you're getting insane strikeout numbers with Josh Hader, and I think as much as I want to be like, man, 23 is a lot for a closer, you got to do it. Urias at 11, absolute bargain. Escobar at 4. And I do think there was a tough thing here. I debated those final couple spots of Escobar and so on between him, Brujan, and Arozarena. I think you could possibly put Arozarena back in the draft and get him around a similar price. But Brujan, on the other hand, did come up late last year, and I'm interested in what he can do. I know he had a small sample size last year, but coming up as a really top big prospect, he's in that young team. It should be a pretty good team again. And I like what Vidal Brujan can do. And last year, again, very, very small sample size, but maybe you keep him at $8 over spending 22 on Arozarena. Kind of interesting. These guys are all on the same team, though. He's a lot of Tampa Bay guys.
Yeah, definitely a wild kind of thing here with all the Tampa Bay guys, which if there's one team that I don't want a lot of pieces of, it's Tampa Bay, because you never know who's going to be in the lineup which day, who's a platoon and all that, because they just don't all play every day. So I don't love that. But yeah, I mean, I have 12 keepers for this team as well. We're going to disagree on some of them. I think that Arozarena is probably a lock at 22, just because you see the production, a 2020 guy, decent on base percentage, scores a lot of runs. And last year was kind of a sophomore slump year. So, you know, you kind of, his feet's going to be under him. I expect him to kind of take another step up this year and be a productive MLB player. My keepers that I have for him, similar to you, are McMahon, Chisholm, Cronenworth, Lowe, Arozarena, Escobar, Laureano, Freed, McCullers, Hader. And the differences between ours is I have him keeping Sixto Sanchez at 6, and who's the other one? I think that's the only one we kind of disagreed on. You have him keeping Brujan. I have him keeping Sixto at $6.
And really, that comes down to which prospect do you believe in more. And, you know, does he feel like he needs more pitching? Sixto Sanchez has, you know, been a big pitching prospect coming up for a while. What can he do? And then obviously you got Brujan as a top 10 prospect as well. So, I mean, these are two top prospect guys. Maybe you don't keep them both, but both pretty much the same price. So.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, whoever's taken over this team, I mean, it's not a bad team. I mean, it was a bad owner, but I don't think that the what this team was left with is really all that bad. I think this team, a couple tweaks, maybe a trade, and just a good draft would put this team right into contention right away.
And you don't have Moncada as a keeper, huh?
Oh yeah, that was the other one, Moncada. I mean, for 11, 14, he hit a full season, 500 at bats.
Yeah,
really hurt. 14 homers, 61 RBIs, no stolen bases,
380. But there's no category he's really necessarily bad in, though. I mean, 61 RBIs for $11. I don't think. I mean, think of where this offense is. $11 for that, I don't think is too bad. I mean, really, look at the difference between him and Chisholm. What's the difference outside of the stolen bases?
Outside of the stolen bases is significant. Plus Chisholm's first year player last year. So I mean,
I don't know. I would keep on him in Moncada. I don't see a reason for $11.
I would argue that he's hurting you in 4 categories. For $11, you can't find 75 runs for $11.
I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily an awful number, but
it's not an awful number, but it's below average for a third baseman.
But I mean, this is also the same price that Carlos Correa is going for, and is his numbers all that different than Carlos Correa?
That's not his price, so that's what he got him for last year. I mean, that's a bargain. It's not. That's not what Carlos Correa is worth on the open market.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I guess if you swap OBP with stolen bases, yeah, you might have a point. But I mean, Chisholm's the more exciting player, the younger player, the higher prospect predicate.
But doesn't Chisholm? But in the same breath, Chisholm hurts you on OBP. Moncada helps you. Chisholm helps you on stolen bases. Moncada hurts you. So I mean, kind of the same player.
Similar, but one's also $9 cheaper. So I'll go with Chisholm. I think that Chisholm will probably have a better year than Moncada. And yeah, I mean, Moncada, like, it's not, if you were looking at Moncada and these were his numbers, he only got 400 at bats. That's one thing, but it's like, he is a below average run producer, a below average run scorer, below average, certainly home runs, only 14 home runs, below average stolen bases, not giving you any stolen bases. And like OBP is the only category he helps you in. So I wouldn't keep him at 11. No way.
Right.
But you might have a Sox fan in this league who might buy him for that.
Yeah, it's a
All right, we're gonna move to the co-commish.
Hey,
His
hey.
team, Erock's Dynasty Squad. The guy who couldn't even make the playoffs.
I know, what the hell.
But too little, too late. He did finish third place in the Roto. He had a good second half, but just came up just.
And the whole year I was saying that, and we kept saying that in all the shows throughout the year was, dang, your team's actually really good. They're just not performing as they should be. Oh, makes sense, makes sense. And then they started perform, but that's the way she goes.
Yeah. I really like your roster, Eric. I like how well you are set up for this year and beyond. I have you for several keepers, obviously all 12. I think all spots you have filled. For me right now, I have your keepers as, wow, I can't believe we disagree on Real Muto right at the top. I thought for sure you'd keep Real Muto for 20 just because I know you. Personally, I don't think I would keep him for 20, but knowing you, I think
I'll tell you my debate between my last two spots. Yeah.
Okay, so I have you Real Muto, Matt Olson, obviously, Devers for 21, obviously, KB for 16, Harper for 40, Taylor for 4, Turner for 1, Barrios for 17, Robbie Ray for 6, 28 for Woodruff, Diaz for 10, Severino for 1. So looking at this, I mean, the thing that jumps out to me right off the bat is you have good hitting. You have, I mean, with Matt Olson, Real Muto, and Devers, you have 3 guys who are not overpriced that you know are going to be tops at their position. You got to, and then Bryce Harper as well, one of the probably league MVPs from last year. Those 4 hitters are a great base to build with. But what really sets you apart is your top 3 pitching. I mean, you look at it and you go, okay, Woodruff for 28, good value, very solid player. I mean, carried you last year. Barrios for 17, good value. 200 innings, 200 strikeouts, solid ERA, solid whip. And I haven't even mentioned the Cy Young you have on your roster for 6. So having those 3, you're not going to find a better trio of pitchers on any roster of anybody's keepers, Barrios, Robbie Ray, and Brandon Woodruff. Solid closer in Diaz, and then Severino for $1. You don't know what you're getting, but for $1, Severino could come back and be an absolute stud. I mean, we know that that's what he could be. So is Severino for your 2? Oh yeah, I don't like it, but Severino is your 4th best pitcher probably. And I mean, you're still going to have the money to spend if you want to go get one more pitcher. You could. I mean, you could keep Diaz, you could keep your big 3, you could keep Severino. And if you wanted to spend up and get one more solid pitcher, you're locked in to be having the best pitching staff in the league.
And that's where I was at. And that's why I made that trade to get rid of Scherzer last year, because that did go through my mind of, man, I have Scherzer, he's got the strikeouts, but I need to switch it up a bit. And I like where I'm at heading in. And with Robbie Ray too, am I going to sit here and anticipate the same season from him? Probably not. I know his track record, but at the same time, I also think him moving to Seattle helps him being in that pitcher's park a little bit compared to Toronto. So we'll see on that. We'll see. But no, I like pretty much what you said is kind of what I'm going for. I pretty much have 4 rotation spots locked in. I have a closer rotation or a closer spot locked in, and I kind of just have to fiddle out those last couple pieces. Hitting wise, I like where I'm at. The 2 that I debated is Grisham and Real Muto. And I think that's because really they put up extremely similar numbers. If you look at fantasy categories, the difference is Grisham is $6 cheaper. The alternative is, yes, Real Muto fits that catcher spot, but really their numbers are very, very similar. And I think Grisham's a younger guy, could have a little bit more potential, but it's tough because, like you said, I don't really want to pay $20 for a catcher. I don't, but those are the ones I debated. So I could still switch that. Even a Gene Segura, 14 home runs, 60 RBIs, 10 stolen bases at $5. I've considered that as well. But I like my team going in. I think Chris Bryant at 16 is a bargain. I know you hated me getting Bryce Harper at 40 last year. You thought that was an overpay, but and I still remember. I need to find that soundbite. I still remember you saying something about what does Harper do for you fantasy wise, and I'm like, he does everything for you fantasy wise, literally everything. So I mean, literally, he fits every single category. So I'm excited, and he didn't even have 500 at bats last year. So we'll see how it goes. But no, I do like my team. I think I'm going in, like you said, with decent balance, but there was some holes last year that I would like to clear up a little bit. But overall, I like where I'm going in. I'm not going to have a ton of money to spend, but I'm going to have to find some values.
Our calculations aren't adding up. So what are the differences between mine and yours? I have you keep Real Muto, and you have
Grisham. That's the $6.
Yeah, but it's not 6. Oh, I was looking at the wrong thing. Okay, that's why. I was
Yeah.
looking at the one below where Dave is at.
And that's kind of where I'm at. And part of me goes, man, do I just eat the $6 and get the more for sure player in Real Muto? Probably, and that's probably what I'll end up doing. So you probably did call my keepers out perfectly, 12 for 12, but I am still kind of debating the Grisham for Real Muto thing at this point.
And having $85 left over isn't bad because it's $85, but you only have 6 spots to fill. So I mean,
Right.
that's still like $12 to $15 or around each.
And that doesn't count the reserve draft, right? Because I mean, those 7 picks, and so I mean, it could fill it out decently, and that's where I kind of looked at where $85 heading into the draft definitely isn't in the top half, but based on where I'm at, I feel comfortable going in with that.
Yeah. What are your trade targets? What do you need? What are you going in? What are you targeting in the draft?
Well, I'm sure as hell never going to say closers because that I just never want to do that. I never. So that's why I really hope Diaz can contribute and do well this year. But I would say at this point, I would like to get someone that can maybe steal some bases, that dreaded stolen base category. I don't think I have a dude that's for sure 20. I have guys that were close to 20 last year. I have guys that could broach that, but I can't sit there and look at my team and go, that guy's even stealing 100%. That dude's stealing 15 bases. I don't have that guy right now. I'd like to try to find that guy, but I also don't want, like most of the guys that steal 30 bases in the league, I don't want to settle for a guy with a 290 on base and 2 home runs, which is kind of what that category's turned into a lot of the time.
I would trade, if I were you, I would trade Justin Turner and Grisham and go get yourself Whit Merrifield.
Yeah, could do that. That is true.
That'd be a good deal. All right.
Look at you, mediator. They need you in those federal talks with the owners.
Yeah, I need to be sitting in on some of these meetings. We're gonna go to a blah owner and a blah team. David Long. His team is up next. Christian Vasquez, Josh Bell, Jose Altuve, and company. I have Dave for 11 keepers. You have him for 9, and we're gonna have some disagreements here. I know we will because he has so many questionable players. I don't love his hand right here. I think he's got a bunch of players that are kind of at value, not really good values, not really bad values. Could keep them, could not keep them, could go either way. So what do you make of some of the guys that he's got on his squad?
I think he's, and I told him this, and he doesn't understand why. He's like, why do you think my team's not that good? Why do you think my team's not that good? Because I don't think it's that good. I think he got a lot of performances last year that people overperformed, like Kyle Gibson doing what he did at 34 years old. Just a lot of the guys. I mean, Bumgarner was having a decent start to the year. German Marquez in Colorado had a decent start to the year. But that was it. I mean, I think he had a lot. Logan Webb was another one. He had a lot of guys overperforming past what they probably should have been, and it kind of kept him in the race. And then over time, as we saw, his team kind of went to what we thought it would be. My keepers for Dave right now are Bell at 11, Altuve at 18, Baez at 18. And again, at first I was like, man, do you keep Baez at 18? But I think at his team you do. Meadows at 18, Sano at 3. I know he's only a couple category guy, but the pop and the RBIs, I think you got to take account for. Chapman at 12, Musgrove at 12. Scherzer is an easy keeper at 37. Chad. I know every time he gets hit a couple home runs, you want to mention, is he getting too old? But he did just fine last year. Thank you very much. And then here's where I'm at. I don't think on many teams Arenado's a keeper at $31 because again, when you look at the categories he's producing in, I'm not sure that he is. The on base was not there. So you're looking at, you even said 75 runs wasn't a lot, right? So he has 80 runs last year, 34 home runs and 100 RBIs. That's what Rhys Hoskins was on pace to do at $11. Yeah. So I don't think Arenado's worth it at 31, but given Dave's team, and I do think it is one of the worst teams, I think you almost have to keep Arenado with the hope that he returns to form. In a sense, but I only have 9 keepers for him. I think he's struggling in a lot of areas. I think his pitching staff he's going to have to get a lot in pitching in this draft. I mean, which one of those guys do you trust outside of Scherzer and maybe the little stint Musgrove showed last year? Which guys do you trust going into the season? So he's got a lot of issues. Go ahead.
Yeah, certainly Musgrove, I think is definitely a keeper for him. What do you make of Kyle Lewis?
That's the one I struggled with because I know he won Rookie of the Year, and I know he didn't really get to play too much last year. Again, you could argue only having 9 keepers, you could keep him, but I don't know. I mean, you look at when he did have kind of that fullish season, which wasn't even a full season. It was 58
Yeah,
games.
I get so thrown off. I was like, he won rookie of the year with 11 home runs. What the hell?
But I mean,
Yeah.
it's still such a small sample size that I don't know if I do keep him at $20, but I do have some inside information, and he was allowing me to share this. Your heart might jump out of his chest when you say this, but he is going to keep Brian Hayes at 20.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
He told me he is. He says, I'm going to do it just to do it.
I know he's
but-
got a big old boner for him, but
Yeah.
I don't think I certainly wouldn't keep him at 20.
No. And that doesn't mean he's not going to be a great player, but not at $20 right now.
You
No.
could throw him back and get him for 5, but
Exactly.
he's stubborn with some of those guys and his Chargers boys.
Oh yeah.
Put him up anyway. Yeah. So we have a few disagreements because I actually didn't even have him keeping Hayes. So based on mine, because I have him keeping 11. If he keeps Hayes, then he'll have 12, and then he'll have like $50 to spend in the draft, and then he'll have like a shit team. But anyway, the guys we disagree on is I think he probably keeps Lewis at 19. I also think that he probably keeps Jameson Taillon at 3. I just think that that's a pretty solid bargain for Jameson Taillon, and a guy who's probably going to win a lot of games with the Yankees. He's not going to put up stellar numbers, but he's going to strike out about a guy an inning. I think he's just going to be a guy that's going to be around a 4 ERA, around a 1.2 WHIP. For $3, that guy will help. He'll strike out plenty. He'll win you a few games. You play him in his 2 start weeks versus good matchups and stuff. So I think that guy's pretty valuable for 3. So I think that he would be solid. I agree with you. German Marquez. Oh, you also don't think he keeps German Marquez for 5?
No, I mean, again, when you see what German Marquez's track record has been year in and year out and year in and year out, the dude's like a 4.3 ERA pitching in Colorado with a 1.2.5 WHIP every single year. Yeah, he sometimes will get around a K an inning, which if you could argue that that's worth $5, it's fine. And again, given where his team's at, you might do that, but I don't think so. I don't know. I mean, could he go back in and get him for $5? Sure, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of it. A 4.4 ERA is not good. I mean, that's not great.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he probably keeps Marquez, and then Scherzer, Musgrove, automatic. Chapman, yeah. Meadows, Baez, Arenado, Altuve, and Bell were mine. I don't think, I mean, Sano for 3. You think he keeps Sano for 3?
I do. I think from a power perspective, he does. I know he had a decent amount of power already, but 30 home runs, 75 RBIs, again, a little under 500 at bats. So maybe you could project that to 35 and 90.
I don't know if that goes up though. I don't know if I don't think he's an everyday player.
Right. Yeah, who knows? But
I
think
Donaldson.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a tough call on that, but I also think Dave's got a huge issue though on base percentage. I mean, when you look at that, if you slide down that category and look at their numbers from last year, that's a lot of 3 followed by a 1. And that's not a good on base percentage. I mean, he's not even getting guys in the 330 range. He's getting guys 312, 319, 315, 315. He really needs to focus in the draft on getting some high 360 plus on base percentage guys, because that killed him last year.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, not a big fan of Dave's squad. I think he's going to have a bad team, and he's going to not have a lot of budget to spend in the draft next year. So
are you saying it's worse than blah?
It might be worse than Blah. He's going to be destined for mediocrity if he keeps.
Oh, wow. Because Blah's kind of like it's not bad, but it's not great. This might be worse than Blah.
Well, you got to think about all the C players they had contributing to his team. Like, I mean, Gibson, Ottavino, Sewald, Logan Webb, like all these guys that he can't keep going into next year.
And Kimbrel. I mean, we didn't even talk about Kimbrel being $3, but again, in this fantasy league, it sucks because you could argue what a great value that is, but now is it a value? It's not, right?
Nope. Yeah. I mean, not as a setup guy. Ian Happ's not going to be on his team next year unless he redrafts him, which he had a solid year, but as a C contract, can't keep him.
Nope.
All right. We're going to go to Eddie's team, Pablo Sanchez. I have Pablo Sanchez, and this is one we are going to disagree on a lot. I have him for 12 keepers. Why don't you give me the 9 keepers that you think he has, and then we'll kind of iron it out.
Okay, I got Will Smith at $8, Buxton at 9. We had that fun conversation last year. Myers at 5, Jordan at 24, Robert at 28, which I traded to him. Bobby Witt at $8. I know it's a prospect, but I think you have to keep him for right now. Winker at $1, easy choice. Kluber, I think you do keep at 8. I think he could have a bounce back there. I like where he's at. His numbers weren't awful last year, but he is aging a bit. And obviously Kopech at 10, I think is an easy choice. But yeah, yours are a bit different, and I disagree with those.
Yeah, I personally think that I think Zach Gallen is certainly a keeper at 16. His numbers last year, he battled a few injuries, but I mean, they're not really reflective on what he can do. I mean, last year was certainly the outlier. I mean, look at these numbers. He had never had an ERA over 3 until last year, where he battled some injuries. I mean, he was one of the top prospects. I mean, in 2019-20, high pedigree going into it, and just perform. You just like, when it comes to like numbers in your first however many starts, he was up there. I mean, a 2.81 ERA, 2019, 2020.
All of a sudden you pitch more than 70 innings though, and looks what happens.
Yeah, but that's kind of with any pitcher and part of the ramp up process. And last year, I mean, yeah, the ERA was a little bit high. The whip was higher than you'd want at 1.29, but he still also struck out 140 guys in 121 innings. So, I mean, the strikeouts are still there. I mean, sophomore slump kind of sort deal. The guy's starting to figure him out. I think he's primed for a breakout this year. I would definitely keep him for 16. If he doesn't want to keep him, I'll certainly be buying him in the auction if I have the open spot. He's a guy that I just love. He's a big fan of him. It was tough to let him go, but at the time he was hurt, so had to get rid of him. I would probably keep Greinke at 21. I don't love Greinke. Oh god, 120 strikeouts, 171 innings. That's not good.
With an awful whip. Yeah, the ERA.
1.1 whip.
Well, I know, but you talk about how many categories is this dude helping you in? Literally, how many categories is this dude helping you in?
I mean, wins, quality starts, whip, and I guess, yeah, that's about it.
And for $20, I don't know, man. I think that's a guy I think you could send back in and get for 10. I mean, he's 30. He's gonna be 38 years old without a team right now.
But if you're only keeping 9, you probably just hang on to him just because.
Sure.
Knowing kind of what we know, you don't keep Maeda for 22. You don't keep Bundy for 10. Soroka, probably not. Again, it's one of those guys where you just throw him back. If you want him long term, you just throw him back and you take him with your last pick in the draft. AJ Puck for 1 didn't really prove anything. So yeah, I don't love a lot of some of those fringe guys. I think he keeps Kluber for 8 as well. High whip last year.
You have him as a Madrigal. You have Madrigal as a keeper as well.
If he traded for him, which I think, did he draft him or trade for him? I don't remember.
I think he might have traded for him, but I'm not for sure.
I just think that you probably just keep a guy like that, especially if you know that he's going to be the starting second baseman. I mean, prospect pedigree, you think that he's going to perform well. He's not going to contribute to a lot of categories, maybe just a few stolen bases, certainly on base percentage, maybe runs scored if he hits atop the Cubs lineup.
My thing with that is I think him, and obviously Cubs fans have talked about this, Horner and him have very similar skill sets and kind of similar bats. When you look at, again, a fantasy perspective, he's not going to hit 10 home runs. He's not going to get 70, 80 RBIs. So are you looking at runs and like a 350 on base percentage? Because he's not stealing bases either. So I think from a pure fantasy perspective, I don't see the value in Madrigal at all.
Yeah, probably not. He's probably pretty overrated, but I think that if you believe in the guy, then you've had him for this long, you probably just
sure. And it's $6. Yeah, it's not like it's a big
Trevor Story for 36.
Yeah.
No,
I don't think you do. I don't know. I mean,
bases?
Nah, I don't know. You could argue the stolen bases, yes, but again, I think a lot determines where he goes because, again, I don't care what anyone says. The stats are there. When you hit in Colorado, there's a difference. Look at Arenado. Look at what happened. It's just there. It's obvious. And Trevor Story is probably not going to be a Colorado Rocky anymore. And what impact does it have? He hit 24 home runs for the Colorado Rockies last year. How many is he going to hit in a different ballpark?
These might be 2 separate questions, but who is the better player and who will have the better season between Trevor Story and Francisco Lindor?
Lindor.
You think Lindor?
Yeah, 100%.
I agree, but I don't think the gap is that wide.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I've never quite looked at Trevor Story as like a top 5 shortstop in baseball.
I've always just there. He's like always top 5 basically every year. He's never had a down year.
But I'll be real curious to see where he goes.
I wouldn't keep him for 36 though.
No, me neither.
Yeah, so I think we probably move on. I kind of like a lot of the pieces that Eddie has. I know you're not crazy about it.
No.
We'll move on to the platoon. Pistol Pete's platoon. Peter Panagakos, His team has got a lot of interesting names, a lot of interesting decisions coming up for him. Pretty quiet on the trade market last year. We're a little disappointing. Usually we get a little bit more heat from
I
him
know.
in regards to that. I know he's busy with his schooling, and he's doing is it accounting? I can't remember.
And yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
And
I believe so.
getting doing all his certifications with that, so he couldn't be as invested as he once was, but definitely some solid names here. Definitely a lot of good name brand names and a lot of prospects potentially. Some guys that we like more than others. Do you have him for 12 keepers?
I do have him for 12 keepers. In fact, I think you could argue I think you could argue he has like close to 14 or 15 keepers on his team, which is why I think he is a trade candidate type guy, whether he goes and does the legwork for that or not. If again, for those teams that are out there looking at your team and saying, hey, I only got 8-9 guys, I think Peter's a team you can look at to say, hey, here's some guys I can scoop up and grab, because there's some guys
that he has.
What's that?
You even want the guys that he has?
I think there could be some. I mean, I don't know if he keeps Strasburg at 21. I don't know if he keeps Donaldson Lamet at 13. And I've always been a decent fan of Lamet. I think there's some other guys out there too, like Patino, $6, very good up and coming prospect. Maybe he doesn't have the room to keep him, but again, that's another one.
Flaherty for 32, huh?
Yeah. Oh, you gotta. Of course, you keep Flaherty. I'm shocked that you don't have him keeping Flaherty. When in his career, outside of a short season last year where he pitched 40 innings in the 60 game season, where in Flaherty's career are you indicating that he's not going to be a good pitcher?
What was his injury last year? Was it an arm injury?
I'm not entirely sure what his injury was.
If it was like an arm or an elbow, I'm concerned. Or like a shoulder or something.
It says the oblique and shoulder injuries.
Shoulder injuries?
Yeah.
Shoulder injuries on a 26-year-old.
I know he's 32, but again, you go back and look at the 2 full seasons he's pitched. You're looking at a 3.3 ERA with close to 200 strikeouts and a 2.70 ERA with 230 strikeouts. So I don't see why he wouldn't keep him, but my keepers for him are Tim Anderson at 20, Walsh at 1, Kana at 1. I do have him keeping Yelich at 39. You could argue you could throw him back in there and get him cheaper. Again, I will disagree. I think if people see a Yelich in there with the amount of money they're going into the draft, I think he goes for the same amount or higher. Machado at 29, Castellanos 24, Lux at $1 is great. Burns 24, Cease 10, Flaherty 32, Melanson 1, and Kershaw at 27. Now, again, it's interesting because I only have him at $51 left over. He doesn't have a lot of room left over. And based on the team he's built, you could argue he might take this in a completely different direction and keep Blade and Rushman and Lux. So I don't think these are the 12 he'll keep. These are the 12 I think he should keep. And I think his team would actually look pretty solid afterwards, but I don't know.
I think there's like 3 categories. It's like, who is he going to keep? Who should he keep? And who will he keep? I think who he will keep is, I think he'll keep Adley Rutschman at 8. I think it makes no sense. I think that for Adley Rutschman, you don't even know if he's going to be on the roster this year.
Makes no sense.
The roster. And so then you're like, he's an $8 catcher. Why would you want to keep an $8 catcher you don't even know is good? And then next year he's going to be a $13 catcher. You don't even know if he's good. Even if he's a top 5 catcher in the league, even if he comes up and does and is Wilson Contreras, then it's still an overpay.
Right.
You need Adley Rutschman to be is you need him to come up and be JT Realmuto right away, which is just not going to happen. It doesn't happen with catchers, and their development is a lot more slow because they have to learn so much else. So $8 for Rutschman just makes 0 sense. So I wouldn't keep him, but knowing Peter, I think he probably does because he
held on to him all year. I mean, I think at this point you have to keep him, but I agree. It's 100% agree with you. You need him to come up and be a producer right away. And who's hitting in front of him in that lineup? Yeah, not many bats. So does he come up this year and probably plays? Yes, but again, another one, Blade at $7.
I don't think he should keep Blade, but I think he will.
Right. And that's the tough part. I think he does have a lot of big contracts, so he might need to keep some of these guys. He might throw Yelich back in there. At $39, you obviously don't think it's worth it.
No. See, I actually have him going a different direction. See, because you have him keeping Flaherty and Yelich, and then having only $51 to spend in the draft. I have him instead keeping Patino for 6, and I don't think he should keep Adley, but I think he will at 8, and that'll give him $108 to spend in the draft for only 6 spots. And then he
Right.
could, if he wants Yelich to go get him this time around, then he kind of can.
He would be in big trouble if those $1 players weren't as productive as they were. I mean, Walsh and Kana and some of those really cheap
Lux productive.
were huge, right? I mean, Cease, 230 strikeouts for $10. You know, I mean, let's not even mention Corbin Burns at $24. I mean, so he's got really, really good values. And if he didn't have those values, he would be in a huge salary cap hole. But I like where Peter's team's at. I don't think it's in a bad spot.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It's not my favorite. I think there's just a lot of things happen. Knowing how he wants to run his team, I think he wants to have those prospects. I think it'll kind of shoot himself in the leg. It'll piss down his leg a little bit, as
There you go.
wise man once said. But yeah, it's got potential. It's certainly solid. He's got some solid keepers, got some solid values, but we'll kind of see what direction he wants to go. I mean, a lot of variance that could happen. All right, next we have our first place roto finisher in Chris Zajac, sliding into the DMs, who has a very, very solid squad going into next year. A very solid squad last year, a very solid squad going into this year. We both have him for 12 keepers. I think we can all agree that he's keeping Vlad, Edman, Bichette, Springer, JD Martinez. You got him keeping JD Martinez, Benintendi, Tim Anderson, Bueller, Gilbert, Peralta, Hendricks, and Barnes. Our keepers are all lined up.
Oh, they're a little different. I have him.
Are they?
I don't have him getting Springer, and I don't have him keeping Barnes.
Oh, I see Barnes at the bottom.
Oh yeah, never mind. That's right. I put Barnes, I guess, but I don't think he's I mean, he was left off the playoff roster last year. I don't know if Boston's gonna. He's $1. So do you hold on to him with the hope that he might be the closer? Sure. I don't know what the Boston closer spot is heading into the year, but he was left off playoff rosters. I'm not sure Boston heads into him with the closer.
How can you argue not to keep Springer and argue that you would keep Hoskins?
Springer at 25? Is that what he's at?
Less than 300 at bats.
I don't know.
If he gets 600 at bats, double all his stats. It's 44 homers, 120 runs, 100 RBIs, and a 350 on base percentage.
I mean, he's got the Toronto thing going for him, so you might as well at this point, right? I've never been a huge George Springer fan. At $25, yeah, if you double those numbers, great. But he's not getting any younger. He's going to be 33 years old. I don't know. I mean, I'd argue in many years that George Springer's fantasy numbers were home runs, RBIs, and a little bit of OBP. But yeah, I mean, you could argue to keep him. I wouldn't say it's a bad call. I don't think it's a bad call, but I don't know. I would keep I think Conforto is an interesting one as well at $19. But
I don't think there's any way you keep Conforto for 19.
No. Okay.
No. I don't even. He's not even on a team. I don't even know who's going to sign him.
Oh, someone's going to sign him.
Somebody will, but I mean,
somebody will.
Platoon somewhere. Who knows? Yeah, he did not have a good year. Kirilloff for 8. You think he throws back Kirilloff?
Probably given the players he has on his team, I think he does. I know again, Kirilloff came in as like a top 10 prospect, but numbers really weren't there under a 300 OVP. I think you got to throw him back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because he was like one of like the 3rd or 4th picks in the reserve draft last year with kind of high hopes. So
and let's talk about it. I mean, I have him keeping Bauer, you don't. So what's your take on that?
Okay, so that's some difference there. So I didn't put a whole lot of thought into it. I think just with the way that he kind of got burned by him last year, it's hard to say like, oh, I'm going to roll with him for $30 for $40 on my budget. But maybe if you held on this long, that maybe you do. I mean, the guy didn't pitch for the entire second half of last year, so it's tough to say what exactly that Trevor Bauer is going to be. I mean, when he's healthy, when he's pitching, I mean, he was a stud. I mean, look at the numbers that I can't argue with. 2.59 ERA, 1.0 whip. I mean, that's Cy Young numbers right there for 40. I guess it makes sense. If there's no charges, if there's nothing coming out of it, I guess maybe you do keep him for 40. That would not give him a whole lot of money heading into the draft, though.
No, it wouldn't. But it's one of those things too. Again, 17 starts. A pitcher usually averages about 33 in a full season. So you could argue you could almost double his numbers. That's 270 strikeouts
Yeah.
and a 2.5 ERA. So,
I mean, it's like 1.2 strikeouts an inning is what he's at.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty nuts. And I wasn't even a huge Bauer fan heading into last year. I'm like, dang, I don't know. Would I really give him a big free agent deal? But I mean, again, he went out there and when he was on the mound, he proved it. And if those are his numbers for an on trajectory, he's worth the $40 as long as he's pitching.
And he is going to be 41 this year.
Yeah.
No, he's not. No, he's going to be. Sorry, I was looking at the salary. He's going to be
Oh,
30.
I thought you meant the
he's gonna be 32
salary.
this
Yeah.
year. Okay, so he's not that old. He's not as old as I thought. Yeah, maybe he does keep Bauer. I wonder what his thoughts are on keeping Bauer or not. I mean, who would he throw back if he's keeping Bauer? So you'd say he would throw back. I don't think he throws back Springer. Edmund for 5.
No. Like I said, I don't think you'd keep Barnes at that point if you had to, because again, I don't know if Barnes is a closer. I'm not sure on that. I mean, I know he's got Garrett Crochet or Crochet on his team or whatever. Again, great pitcher, but he's not going to keep him at $5. I wouldn't think.
Barnes and he keeps Bauer for 40. That would give him like $30 to spend.
But again, we're looking at teams that, okay, he's got $30 to spend on 6 dudes. So that let's just pretend that's $5. So an average of $5 per player. This is still a guy that finished what first in Roto. I mean, it's not like his team was bad. I mean, that offense of Vlad, Emin, Bichette, if you do count Springer and Martinez and Benintendi, is there really a ton you need to add to that? I mean, I don't think so. I think the pitching is the real concern. So I think you almost have to keep Bauer, because if you don't keep him, you have Ian Anderson and Buehler, which isn't a bad one too. But then who?
Freddie Peralta.
Well, yeah, Freddie Peralta. True. Yes, Freddie Peralta. So you got Freddie Peralta.
It's fine because Buehler's your ace, Bauer's your 2, Freddie Peralta's your 3. That gives your top 3 a very good run for its
right. So if you keep Bauer, then
Plus
you have Bauer, Peralta,
the
Buehler, and Anderson. That's disgusting.
Yeah, Anderson is his 4th, and then he's got the best closer in the game, Liam Hendricks. Oh,
that would be quite crazy.
I'm getting a little scared right now.
Yeah, Chris's team's going to go into next year just as loaded, and
Plus
that's why
the dynamic duo of Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Right,
George Springer as your hitters,
and that's why I think he can afford going into the draft without a ton of money to spend. If he can find a couple $2-3 guys that he likes and is comfortable with, heck, Vaughn's not going to go for 14 again, right? So maybe he goes in there and sneaks Vaughn out. Yeah, who knows? He could be.
Yeah, I might need to slide Christopher up my power rankings a little bit. I think I had him high, but. Oh no, I do have them high. That's right. Okay, so we'll get to those in a little bit. We got 2 teams left. We got Phil and Tyler. Let's get to my father Phil first. Team Special K. He made a lot of moves last year, surprisingly. He kind of shuffled the deck a few times. I texted him this morning to ask kind of what his thoughts were. He thinks he's got about 12 keepers, but I disagree. What do you think?
I do have him at 12. I actually think he had a couple close calls with some of them too, where you could argue maybe a 13th. I have him with 12 with a decent amount of money heading into the draft as well. So
I'm going to stop you right there. I think you're high if you think that he should keep Hosmer for 9.
Why? I mean, again, we're looking at
12 homers.
Other first basemen.
12 homers for a position that's deep.
But a 340 on base percentage isn't
I don't care.
awful.
That 340 is an average on base rate. He's hitting 12 home runs at the first base position when every single other first base position is getting 32 home runs.
Would you argue to keep Carlos Santana instead?
No, I wouldn't.
I don't know. I think you keep him.
Oh God, no.
And again, the odds of him even playing in San Diego next year, who knows? I mean, he could get traded. San Diego is not that he's ever been a huge home run guy, but.
All right, go ahead. Sorry for interrupting.
Oh no, you're good. My keepers for him are Ramirez at 38, Swanson at 7, Judge at 21, which he had traded, got back, I believe. Schwarber at 14, Tucker at 27, Ohtani at 15, Rendon at 22, Brantley at 13, Malley at 3, Presley at 10, Rogers at 3, and Hosmer at 9. And like I said, I think you can make a tough call between them, but I mean, he's still going to go in with $78. So if you even wanted to throw Hosmer off the list and have 11 keepers at $87, by all means do it.
Yeah, I don't think you should. I think Hosmer would be a bad keep at $9. You can find 14 homers and a 340 on base percentage from anywhere, especially at the first base position where you need a slugger to play that position. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on a few of those. I don't think he keeps Rizzo at 23. He thinks that he's going to keep LeMahieu at 24. What do you think of that?
Again, it's tough to call because again, baseball is such a track record sport, and I think I remember even saying, wow, LeMahieu at $24 when he was drafted is a bargain. And I remember thinking that to myself last year because this is a guy that's going to have close to a 400 on base percentage, 20 home runs, and I think even a couple of years ago, he had 100 RBIs and he hit like 330. So I think the track record's there, but again, he is 33 years old. I don't know. But he is hitting in New York. So last year's season was awful from LeMahieu, so I'm not too sure on keeping him at 24.
Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at a lot of his hitters, I mean, if you're starting LeMahieu, Ohtani, and Kyle Tucker, I mean, that's a great budget players. And they're not budget players, but the Ramirez for 38 is a real bargain. Ohtani for 15 is absolute steal. And Tucker for 27, who I criticized. I didn't think he would be a $27 player. He played his ass off, had a really good season. I was not expecting 14 stolen bases from Kyle Tucker. And then on top of 30, I mean, that's kind of what the difference maker, because if he was in 500 at bats, if he was a 30 homer, 90 RBI, 80, run kind of guy within slightly above average on base percentage, I'd be like, okay, like he's around that kind of value. But then you add on the 12 stolen base or the 14 stolen bases, and you're like, oh, now he's a 5 category contributor. Now he's more of like a $30 to $40 player. So it is some good value there.
And I'd argue Judge too at $21. I mean, for such a big name as he is, I was a little surprised he went for that cheap. I mean, 40 home runs, 100 RBIs last year. I mean, 370 on base percentage. You'll take that for $20 every day.
Yeah, but the odds of him getting 500 at bats are always.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. That is true. He's already 29. How about that? Yeah. Time flies.
29. How many times has he gotten 500 at bats?
Probably twice.
Twice, yeah, in 2017 and in 2021. So yeah, I mean, the hitting is stellar, and he's got every category on base. And those 5 guys, he's killing on base percentage, like an incredible on base percentage between Ohtani, Judge, Tucker, probably Schwarber. I think he keeps and Ramirez. Stolen bases with Ohtani and Ramirez. Boom, check. RBIs, those are going to be their home runs. Those are going to be their runs scored. Yeah, like his offense is great.
Yeah.
But what do you have that excites you in this pitching staff?
Yeah, I don't think based on the season last year, you keep Darvish at 38. I know the K's are going to be there and he'll probably, but I mean, is Darvish at 35 years old still going to be a sub 3 ERA pitcher? I don't know.
$38. I don't want it.
No, I don't want it. So, I mean, obviously Malley, you take 100%. Blake Snell, you don't. Presley, you do. So he's literally going to have to retool his entire pitching staff. But like you said, the hitters are there. And that's why I have him keeping Brantley. I have him keeping Rendon, which you don't have him keeping Rendon. So I don't know if you want to speak on that, but I think his hitting is 100% there. So if he can go into the draft with $80 to kind of fill out his rotation, I don't think that's the worst.
Not a lot of money for a rotation.
No, it's not, but there's also not a lot of big names
that needs horses.
There's no horses out there though. That's going to be the problem. Yeah.
And the horses that are out there, your Aaron Nolas and your Darvishes, like they're still going to cost 30 to 40 at least.
Now if you're not keeping Rendon at 22, you have to, that's telling me you think he's washed, because Rendon at 22 last year was an absolute fucking steal heading into the season.
I tried to get him all year, and I'm so glad that I never could. Because
right, but you're basically saying at 31 years old he's done, right?
I mean, I wouldn't say washed, but I mean, like, what? How can you argue that looking at his numbers from last year that he's a $22 player? I mean, he had 200 at bats. So even if you triple all his stats, that's 18 homers, 90 RBIs, and
I know you didn't keep Yelich either, but kind of the same boat as Yelich, right? Really disappointing season, around the same age. Yelich is 39, Rendon's 22. I'm keeping Rendon for 20. You think if Anthony Rendon heads into that draft, someone's not paying more than $22 for him?
I mean, personally, I like Rendon. I mean, I kind of want to talk him down just because I hope he throws him back. But I mean, last year was the aberration. Last year was the outlier.
It's gotta be, right?
Look at all his numbers. If his home runs by year, 20, 25, 24, 34, still had a solid year in 2020, 9 homers in 60
And
games.
the
20
lineup, right? Trout and Ohtani hitting in front of you. I mean,
Yeah.
that's going to be nice.
With very, very good on base percentage. I mean, 418, 412. That was kind of his calling card the last couple of years. So
Sure.
I think that's just kind of what he is. I would hope that last year is kind of the outlier, but yeah, I mean, he's not getting any younger, and recency bias, I guess. But I mean, what have you done for me lately? Is
Sure.
kind of what we do there. I mean, probably keep him for 22, but we'll see. Brantley kind of fell off last year. He only really contributes in on base percentage and runs scored in the games that he does play. So I don't know if at 13 I'd keep Brantley.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument there. Yeah.
I don't think that you should keep Brantley. I don't really know if he keeps Rendon. So I think that Malley is automatic. Presley for 10, you probably keep. Brennan Rodgers, Ohtani, Tucker, Judge, Schwarber, Swanson, Ramirez. That only gives him 9 keepers for me. If you include Rendon, that gives him 10. I just don't think there's a whole lot after that. And I think he's got some serious retooling in his pitching rotation he has to do. And I think that the $22 he would save by not keeping Rendon should probably be allocated towards pitching.
Right. Yeah. He's going to go into, no doubt, without a doubt in mind, he's got to go into that draft looking for pitching, because he just is not having it heading into the year. That's glaring.
Is his pitching good enough? Is his hitting good enough to slide Ohtani over to pitcher?
No, I don't think so. I think you keep that bat in there. I mean, with the innings, Ohtani's not going to throw 200 innings. I don't think you do.
Yeah, I agree. You can't pass up that production, and there's nobody running away with any of the hitting categories.
Plus the steals Ohtani has, like, that's something that people don't think about. Ohtani steals bases. I mean, that in itself makes, 26 steals last year. That blows my mind. Yep. And the show still wants to give him like a 40 speed rating. I don't get it.
All right, we'll go into our last team. Tyler, Team T-Pain. Got an interesting roster, made a lot of moves towards the deadline, kind of mailed it in, got some future assets, and he's got some quality keepers that I like. Who are your favorites?
I like a lot of the moves he made last year. There was a couple of them where I'm like, man, your team really was set up next year. And then he made a move where I'm like, I wasn't too sure on that. But I do like a lot of the moves he made. I do think Alonso's a keeper at 29, Muncy at 19, Mountcastle at 4, Tatis obviously at 46, Carlson at 16. Tough. Marte 20, Gurriel 6, Mize at 10, one of your favorites. Zach Wheeler, I do have him as a keeper at $26. And again, I know I rigged on him all last year. Not a huge Zach Wheeler fan, but I think you got to keep him at that price. Savali at 3, Kepler at 6, Hayes at 6. So I do have him with a full 12, and I still have him with about $70 left. So I like his team. I think it could be competitive, and I think he's in one of those spots with his team's decent, but with the right moves in the draft, I think he could be in one of those top 5 spots.
I do have him keeping Luke Voit for 3. I think that the ceiling is way too high for him, for a guy that hit 50 home runs or whatever his pace was 2 years ago. And I do think that for $3 is a good bargain for him, but I don't have him keeping Kepler for 6, Hayes for 6, or Carlson for 16. I just think that those guys just don't really contribute in many categories. Kepler, stole 10 bases. That's great, but he didn't really hit a ton of home runs. Very, very low on base percentage. Hayes not really contributing much. I mean, almost a full season, 500 at bats. He didn't really help you in any categories. And then Dylan Carlson, I had high hopes for him. I liked him coming into the season. I wanted to see what he could do in 500 at bats. He got 500 at bats. He didn't do anything. Plenty of runs scored, but even that's not even a 79 runs scored and 540 at bats is not even good. So that was like the only category he contributed in. And I guess on base percentage, maybe he takes like a second or third year leap, but for 16, you can't bank on that. I think that you just go back, you get him for 9 or something if you believe in him.
Now, why in the world do you not have Zach Wheeler as a keeper?
Oh, I do have Zach Wheeler as a keeper. Do I not?
Oh, you do? Okay. For some reason,
I got him. He's at the bottom.
Okay. I was going to say that. I thought for some reason you didn't, but yeah, no, Zach Wheeler's a keeper there. I think the pitching could use some work, because I don't think you can head into the season going, man, my 2 and 3 is Wise and Savali. I don't think you can do that. So I think Tyler has a lot of needs at pitcher. I think his lineup is okay. But I think he's going to need some of those young guys to produce, which is why I have him keeping Carlson, Hayes, and stuff like that, because they are on the younger side. And what do you do with Bellinger?
I was just about to say, well, you think that Peter should keep Yelich. You think that my dad should keep Rendon, but you think that Tyler shouldn't keep Bellinger?
If here's my thing, and if Tyler listens to this, which I'm sure he will, I would keep Bellinger if you decide not to keep Carlson and, like I said, I don't even know if you're thinking of keeping Hayes and Kepler, but I would take those three off the list just to keep Bellinger at 42 if you needed to. Because again, we're talking, I don't know, I know it's a what for have you done for me lately type, and that's how sports are, but he's proven it. It's not like he did it for 1 year. I mean, Bellinger was good for 3+ seasons, and
down.
The first 3 years, I wouldn't consider that up and down. His first 3 years in the big leagues, but I think at $42 you could argue not to keep him, but at the same time he needs pitching bad. So do you maybe throw him in, save that 42, and go after some pitchers? I think you almost have to.
I would not keep Bellinger for 42. I think he burned you last year. I just don't think that you could do it.
Who gave him 42? I did.
Interesting about his roster is that Tyler has to make a move, because I don't think you can go into draft night with 3 first basemen, and they're 3 quality first basemen: Voit, Gurriel, and Pete Alonso. And I just, you have also Mountcastle, who's first base eligible,
Muncy.
and Muncy as well. So it's just like you have way too many first basemen. Muncy, you're going to play at second base. But I mean, who else? Do you have any other second baseman? No. So Muncy is just your second baseman, so that's no big deal. You always, if a guy's second base eligible, you automatically play him at second base, because second base is like the worst position to for anyone other than catcher. So I think that he needs to trade one of these guys, Voit or Gurriel, or even a Pete Alonso, to a team that might need a first baseman. There aren't going to be many, but maybe a team that only has 1 first baseman that wants to take on that DH spot or utility spot. So we'll see kind of what he does. I only have him for 10 keepers, taken, and I talk about which would leave him with $94 going into the draft to spend on pitching, which there's a lot of teams that are going to need pitching. So it's going to be tough. That's kind of why I like where I'm at, where I'm like, hey, I can keep 7 pitchers and not worry about it, because there's so many teams that are going to need pitching that the bidding is going to probably go up on them quite a bit. And there's not going to be a lot of arms available.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of it, is that, especially this first draft, like we talked about, there's not going to be some premier top name pitchers out there. So they could very much go for more than they should. Yeah.
All right. As we wrap up these team analysis, do you have anything more to say about Tyler's team or any others?
Not too much. Like I said, I think Tyler's in a really interesting spot with the right moves. His team will be competitive. If he makes the wrong moves, his team won't be. I mean, you could argue some of these teams are good enough where you could draft kind of poorly this year, but your core is still good. Yeah. And your team could still do well. But Tyler's at that spot where his team's decent. You got to make sure in the draft your moves pan out, because if they don't pan out, you're going to be in the bottom 5. If they do pan out, I think you got a shot at being one of the top 5 teams.
Yeah, I agree. Let's before we move on to our power rankings, I do want to kind of do like a recap, because as we kind of mentioned earlier, I talked about like where you guys can find the free agents in looking at like the C values of all these players and such. But the top free agents that were available, we mentioned like the Carlos Rodons and the Cedric Mullins. I don't want you guys going into the draft thinking that those are going to be the only players that are going to be available, that, oh, we're just going to have to spend $60 on Logan Webb because nobody's available. I comprised a list of guys that I think that are not going to be kept or shouldn't be kept. And many of these guys will be kept, but I think that the majority of them should not be kept and won't be kept. So here's some of the names that I think will also be available for auction this year. I think pitcher-wise, Luis Castillo, Kyle Hendricks, Ryu, Aaron Nola, Giolito, Glasnow, Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Emmanuel Clase, Trevor Bauer, Jack Flaherty, Steven Strasburg, Clayton Kershaw, Zach Greinke, Kenta Maeda, Mike Soroka. Now, you adding those to the list, you're like, okay, well, this is actually a decent free agent class, potentially, depending on whether they're kept or whether they're not kept. Hitters is even deeper than that. I got Goldschmidt, Mookie Betts, Francisco Lindor, Marcell Ozuna, Ryan Hoskins, Josh Donaldson, Matt Chapman, Charlie Blackmon, Wilson Contreras. I almost said Bobby Abreu.
Jose
Abreu, thank you. Bregman, Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger, Dylan Carlson, Alberto Mondesi, DJ LeMahieu, Anthony Rizzo, Anthony Rendon, Michael Conforto, Christian Yelich, Trevor Story, Cabrian Hayes, and Gleyber Torres. As we talked about, many of those guys will probably be kept or might be kept, but when you add those to the Cedric Mullins, the Carlos Rodons, the Logan Webbs, and all those, now you're going, okay, well, at least we know that there's going to be guys that are available that we can spend our money on. Now, the top guys, the Tatises and the Trouts and the Acuñas, those guys are all going to be kept. So you're not going to have those guys, but there will be talent available in the draft. You just have to be able to find it, and you got to be willing to spend. Any comments on any of those names?
No, I think it will be interesting to see who really does get held on to. Obviously, looking at some of those top names like the Castillos. I mean, me and you disagreed on that. The Aaron Nolas, obviously Giolito. We even had said on your team, I think a lot of people would keep Giolito at that price, but you can't. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of the one big thing here. So I'm curious to see how the market resets. I'm curious to see what these guys do go for, if there's overspending, and what the draft looks like. I think now that everyone's done it a year, it'll get really interesting, because it got to the point last year, the last 20 minutes, where 8 teams were down to $0 left, or they filled out their roster, and there was 4 or 5 teams that were kind of being able to kind of pick and choose who they wanted at the end.
So Chris Sale, Syndergaard, what's his name?
Eloy, yep.
Eloy, and Mancini. That's how I was able to get a lot of those guys.
And Severino was $1 as well, too. So I mean, a lot of teams, I don't want to say blew their load too early, because I'd never done it before either, but there was a point there where I was like, oh my God, my roster's full, and there's 3 or 4 guys out there that I could get for $2-3. You know, and you don't
sit back and let everybody spend their money.
Exactly. That's the way to do it.
All right. Power ranking time. The time is here. We have our way too early 2022 power rankings. I'm going to start from the bottom up. And
this is, and I would like to say, this is a mixture of how good we think your team is now, with also a mixture of, like, you got to throw in the monetary value of, like, how much money you have going in, right? Exactly. I mean, I think it's a combination of that.
Combination of who's on your roster, what the values are, and how much money you have to spend going into the auction.
Right. Because obviously these power rankings could change right after the draft, but I mean, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. In 14th place, I have Chad as our worst team. We alluded to it. Not in great shape heading into the draft.
Are you going to? Oh, sorry.
How do you want to do it?
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I could, if you wanted to go down your whole list, or you wanted me to do my 14, it don't matter.
Yeah, I'll go down my whole list, then you can give yours.
Awesome.
All right. 13th. I got Justin. Sorry, Justin. I just don't think you have that many keepers. I think it could be 4, or it could be 9. Not in a great spot. 12. I got Dave. Talked about it. Not a big fan of some of your values. I just don't think you really have that many values. You kind of have a bunch of players that are kind of at what they should be. So it's tough for you to be able to save money there. 11th, I got that COVID-free team. I think it needs some help. I don't think it's bad, but I just still think it needs a little bit. It needs a little help. In 10th, I have Phil. I just don't think that he has 12 keepers, and if he does have 12 keepers, he's not going to have hardly any money to spend in the draft. I got 9. I got Tyler. Nothing's really jumping off the page for me to Tyler. He's got some holes to fill. He's going to have stolen bases, but pitching staff needs help. Not in the best of shape. In 8th, I have Bryce. You know, he's going to need pitching. He's going to need some hitting. He's got some holes to fill, but I like some of the values that he has on his roster. 7th, I have myself. I don't think I have the greatest values in the league. I don't have like the stellar $1 players. I don't really have, great values. I have solid players, but I'd like to make some moves to get some better values. So I'm going to put myself in the middle of the pack at 7, depending on what moves I make going forward. 6th, I have Peter. I like a lot of the values he has. He's got some good price on good players, Castellanos, some pitchers that are really good values. I think his pitchers are better than mine. Got him at 6th. 5th, I got Jay. Jay's still got a solid team. Man, those $1 players are just killer, that are going to be really helping him. And 4th, I have Eddie. I think Eddie's team is solid. I think a lot of the values that he has, which I know you very much disagree with. I think with Buxton and Gallen and some of those other guys, I like a lot of the players that he does have. I think he's going to be set up in most categories going to next year. He's just going to have to find the right guys in the auction. He's going to have plenty of money to spend. 3rd, I have Crimmy in 3rd. I think his team could be very good. He certainly has high ceiling players, as we talked about. Health is definitely a concern, but I think that there's 2 teams that are in better shape than he is. The first team, which is coming in second place in my power rankings, is yours.
Hey.
Follman. Got some great players. Love the way you're set up. Not many gaps in your team. Some solid values, but I mean, yours, I mean, you're pretty much set in every category. And the only team that looks better than yours in first place is Chris. Chris Ajax team is coming in first place in my way too early 2021 power rankings, or 2022 power rankings. Yeah, after reviewing, I went to go back and review his team and review my power rankings. Because I was like, man, wherever Chris is, I have him way too low. His
Still
team
got him number one.
And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I have him in first. So
Those dang Blue Jays, man.
See my reaction where I was like scrambling, trying to be like, where is he at in my power rankings? I better move him up. Oh, nope, he's already in first. I had it right the first time. All right, Eric, take it away.
And it's funny too, because you could argue Chris overpaid for Vlad and Bo last year in terms of what they had done going in to that point.
That argument after in the post draft show.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. And I said, and I love Vlad and Bo. I love that Blue Jays team, but it's crazy. But 14, I got Eddie. I don't think there's a whole lot going on there. To me, honestly, the way I'm looking at it, and I know there's going to be guys in the draft, and obviously you're going to find guys that you can find for $1, $2, $3 that are going to make huge differences this year. But in terms of raw star power in the draft, if you're needing 6 or 7 keepers or something like that, you're in a little bit of trouble. So I think Eddie at 14, Chad, exact same boat at 13, too many prospects. 12 is Justin. Again, still, I don't have him at 12 keepers either. Dave, I got at 11. He's going to have a lot of issues trying to fill that team. It's one of those things where he's got some players, but there's just too many holes to fill in too many spots. COVID-free at 10. So there's our kind of open spot there. Not quite in the top half of the league, but could be a lot worse. Phil, I got at 9. Again, with the right moves, he needs to completely revamp that pitching staff. If this was an offensive power ranking, I think you can argue that his offense is in the top 4 or 5, but he's got to do something with that pitching. So I'm a little wary of that. Bryce, we both got at 8, so right in the middle. I have Tyler at 7, kind of in that, again, could fall, could go higher spot. Jay, I have at 6. I think his team's really loaded. It's just he's not going to have much money in the draft. So he's literally going to have to do what he did last year and get those $1 players again, because he does have those big contract guys. I have myself at 5. I have Kyle, the reigning league champion, at 4. His team is loaded. It's just a matter of how he's going to finagle his money around and figure it out to head into the season. Peter, I have at 3. I like his team. I think he could make some moves, but he's got a lot of value there. I would like to see him do a move before the season starts to shore that up a little bit. Reigning champion Chris at number 2. And just because I've said it all along, I don't know why I'm putting so much trust in this guy. I really don't know why I'm doing that, but I am going to put Krim at 1, which means I can go back to this 3-4 months from now, 5 months from now, whenever we do this, and I can go, Krim, why did you trade your whole team again? I mean, that's what I'm waiting to do. Why did you trade your entire team again, whether it's football or baseball? Stop doing it. You got a nice core, hold on to it, make a couple moves, make it better. But that is my ranking list.
All right, and that wraps up our agenda. Is there any other smack talk you want to get off your tongue? Anything else you want to cover before we head out of here?
No, man, I'm ready to roll. I'm excited to get going. Hopefully we get baseball at the right time, and I'm kind of excited to we usually do about a month recap every so often. So I'm excited to be doing that and kind of keep it rolling.
All right, for Eric Follman, I am your league champ, Kyle Carbone. Don't you forget it. This has been the 2022 season preview / keeper speculation / league recap. Peace out, hombres.